Daddy, help me. Steve, where are you?
Hello, and welcome to episode 37 of Voices in the Static, a Silent Hill fan podcast. My name is Whitney, and I'm a longtime fan of Konami's survival horror series, and the owner of the fan site, SilentHillHistoricalSociety.com. In today's episode, I'm continuing a retrospective on the Silent Hill series with several of my friends and fellow Silent Hill fans with an in-depth discussion on the 2006 Silent Hill film. Say hello, everybody!
Hello.
Hi.
Oh. Hello.
So why don't you introduce yourselves in case people don't know who you are?
That's a good point. I'm Kyle Campbell. I'm a freelance writer. I write for places like IGN and USA Today, and I used to write for Reliant Horror with October, and I've known Whitney for a long time, and we used to do a podcast called Whispers in the Dark. That was kind of bad, but it was fun. But yeah, that's it.
Okay, I'm Amy, and I do SilentHillCommunity.com, as well as YouTube channels, Creepy and Weird Podcast, and Internet Kindness.
I am October. I am a senior editor at ReliantHorror.com, as well as a freelance illustrator.
And I'm William Lockwood. I'm the editor-in-chief for ReliantHorror.com, and I'm also the creator of the YouTube channel Screaming Wave Productions.
Yay! Okay. Well, before we jump into general discussions, here is a summary of the film in case anyone listening needs a refresher. Spoilers, obviously. Also, let me know if I get anything wrong. All right. 30 years ago, there was a horrible accident in Silent Hill in which a fire grew out of control, hit a coal seam, and then spread underground throughout the whole town. The underground fires continue to burn to this day, and thanks to the toxic fumes, Silent Hill's become just a ghost town. Rose and Christopher Da Silva have an adopted daughter named Sharon, who has been suffering from some dangerous sleepwalking habits while having vivid dreams about Silent Hill.
We're going home. Silent Hill! Silent Hill!
Rose!
Shh. Wake up!
Hey! It's okay, sweetie. We're here now.
It's a bit strange Sharon would have so many dreams about a ghost town, even referring to it to be home at times. Given the frequency of her dangerous sleepwalking and the ineffectiveness of medications, Rose decides to do something drastic and take Sharon to the dangerous town in hopes of finding some sort of answer.
Why'd you cut off the cards?
Look, Chris, that's not going to stop me from taking her there.
Listen, honey. We gotta put Sharon in a hospital. She needs constant care and she needs that medication.
The medication doesn't work. She's getting worse every day. Honey, the adoption people said Sharon came from West Virginia.
At Silent Hill, it's in West Virginia. I'm not giving up on her, Chris. I'm not.
Have you actually read the websites, Rose?
Yes, Chris. I read them.
Just trust me on this. Please, just trust me on this.
Chris isn't down with this plan, of course, and attempts to prevent Rose's trip by freezing their credit cards and reporting her car as stolen. Drastic moves on both sides, but I'm definitely with Chris here, given that Rose is taking her daughter to a town with toxic fumes and unstable ground. I mean, come on, lady.
Yeah, she didn't think that through.
No, but I mean, desperate times, desperate measures, I guess.
Yeah.
Rose is undeterred by Chris's actions, but his meddling did get Sybil Bennett, a Brahms police officer, on Rose's tail after she looked up Rose's license after spotting a suspicious interaction between the mother and daughter at a gas station outside Silent Hill.
Why'd you change your pictures?
I didn't. Mommy?
You can't remember.
No. I don't like that, Mommy.
Baby, you can't remember doing
Who did
this.
that?
Hey, baby, it's okay.
Mommy, who
It's okay, honey. Mommy's here.
Honestly, it wasn't that nefarious, but Sharon was upset at seeing a picture was ruined in her sketchbook, not realizing she did it herself while asleep. But an upset kid sets off alarm bells for Sybil ever since she saved a kid who was dumped down a mine shaft in Silent Hill.
We had a guy come up here 2 years ago. Snatched a little boy from a rest stop, dropped him into a mine vent. I never want to see anything like that again.
Look, I don't know what you're thinking here, but you're not helping. There is no way I would ever harm my own daughter.
How do I even know she is your daughter?
When Sybil attempts to pull the pair over, Rose decides to make a run for it instead when she sees a turn-off sign for Silent Hill. The two get into a high-speed chase, and Rose crashed when a little girl suddenly walked out onto the street, and she swerved to try and avoid her. Rose awakes sometime later relatively unharmed, but is startled to find that Sharon has disappeared from the passenger seat while she was unconscious. Outside, ash falls from the sky and the entire area is shrouded in a thick white fog. Thankfully, Sybil is nowhere to be seen, so Rose is able to proceed into town on foot to track Sharon down. Off in the distance, Rose spots a child and, believing it to be Sharon, calls out to her. The girl runs away, though, leading to a chase through the street and down a back alley. A distant air raid siren rings out, and Rose's surroundings are quickly plunged into darkness, leaving her no choice but to use a lighter to illuminate the way forward. The further Rose explores, the more disturbing the sights become, tracking the child through a maze of rusty chain-link fences with random hospital equipment and even body bags strewn about. Eventually, Rose encounters an eviscerated person strung up via barbed wire and dressed as a miner. Horrified by the unexpected sight, she's also disturbed to see that, despite all their injuries, the person within the suit is still very much alive. Gray, childlike monsters suddenly surround Rose, and she's nearly overwhelmed as she flees into a nearby bowling alley. Rose's life is spared only when the beasts suddenly vanish into thin air. She wakes on the floor of the bowling alley and sees that daylight and fog have returned. The chain-link maze she fled from has disappeared and is replaced with empty back lots and innocuous wooden fences. If it wasn't clear already, there's something seriously strange going on in Silent Hill, as the whole place temporarily changes into a nightmarish version of itself, where vicious creatures crawl out under the cover of darkness, and the environment itself becomes a horrid mesh of metal, rust, and fire. To make things worse, Rose is cut off from the rest of the world since the roads leading out of town have been mysteriously destroyed. Despite her worsening circumstances, Rose is determined to find Sharon, and luckily, she's not alone in this nightmare. Sybil, who survived her own spill off her motorbike off-screen,
Cracked my head on the road pretty good when my bike went down. Must have been out for a while.
teams up with Rose after surviving one of Silent Hill's terrifying shifts into the other world, and facing off with several monsters, including the fan-favorite Pyramid Head in Midwich Elementary School.
That's him!
Jesus Christ!
Funny how an unexplainable near-death experience can bring people together and allow them to put aside their differences.
You take these handcuffs off me.
No. Get walking. There's a fire lookout tower on the far side of Toluca Lake. It should have a radio.
Fuck you, you stupid cop.
2 hours later.
You saw that, right? That was real? What the fuck is going on?
All right. I know this is crazy. I know. We gotta calm right down because my kid is not here and I've gotta find her before this happens again.
I don't even know where to start.
But there's also the Brethren, a religious sect led by a woman named Christabella.
What is it, Anna? The first burning. Before the town had a name, the elders of my elders kept us pure.
The founders of this town were witch hunters.
Burning the witch held back the darkness. It stopped the apocalypse.
a group who have been trapped in this nightmare world for decades now, only with their deep faith in church providing them sanctuary from the darkness.
We judge because the souls of history hang in the balance. Because our faith has never failed us. Our faith keeps the darkness of hell at bay.
Then use your faith to help me find my little girl.
Only the demon knows where she is.
Then tell me, where do I find this demon?
But there is one mysterious resident all on her own, Dahlia Gillespie, whom Rose meets while wandering the streets.
Only the Dark One opens and closes the door to Silent Hill.
Please. I don't know what's happening. Do you know what's going on here? I'm looking for my daughter. I'm afraid that she's been hurt.
We've all lost our children. Our light. They deceived me. They're evil. They're hate. They hurt my child. They did terrible things to her. Melissa.
She seems to understand why the town shifts into a nightmarish otherworld, but speaks in riddles. She was banished from the others, and like Rose, Dahlia's also missing her daughter Alessa, who she claims was hurt and taken from her for an evil purpose. Strangely though, upon seeing a photo of Sharon, Dahlia claims that it's really of her daughter Alessa. Could Sharon and Alessa be somehow related? Rose is led around Silent Hill by various clues found throughout her investigation. A torn drawing from Sharon's sketchbook leads her to the school. A wooden keychain, I think it was a keychain, she finds there leads her to the Grand Hotel, where she meets Anna, a member of the Brethren, who in turn leads her to church for safety, and Christabella later leads her to the bowels of Brookhaven Hospital. All these places have a heavy connection to the cause of the fire so many years ago, but more on that in a moment. While Rose is finding clues and chasing a girl who resembles Sharon around town, her husband Chris is back in the real world trying to find her.
I'm trying to find my wife.
I know, hang on a second. Now that vehicle you were talking about, we found it. Yeah? It's at the end of the bridge here, but it's empty. Got no indication anyone's come under any harm.
Good Christ.
Now, you mind telling me what the hell your wife's doing all the way up here, Mr.
Chris is so...
My pleasure, Chris. Now,
look,
here's what
the faster we start looking, the faster we're gonna find her.
All right. Hold your horses, Chris. I've also got a missing deputy.
He meets a policeman named Thomas Gucci, who found Rose's abandoned car, and accompanies him into town, but their search for Rose is in vain, as Chris doesn't realize that his daughter and wife are actually stuck in a different dimension. Through his investigation and talking with Gucci, a former Silent Hill resident, we learn more about the town's dark past and how the blaze that started the coal seam fires all those years ago was thanks to the Brethren burning a little girl named Alessa alive, who has an uncanny resemblance to his daughter Sharon.
Sis, Gucci, do you know her? Is that my daughter's birth mother? Huh?
I knew that girl. I did. I was told you didn't make it through the night. Night of the fire. The night of the big fire in Silent Hill. There were these people. These fanatics. What they did to that child was terrible. That was 30 years ago and it's over now.
Not as far as I'm concerned.
So, back in foggy Silent Hill, Sybil and Rose follow Christabella and a few of the Brethren over to Brookhaven Hospital, the home of a great demon, who Christabella claims might know of Sharon's whereabouts. Unfortunately, just as the pair are about to go down in the elevator, Christabella catches sight of Sharon's photo inside Rose's locket and brands the two as witches due to Sharon looking just like Alessa.
Witch! Her child's the likeness of Alessa! Her child's the next vessel! Stop her! Don't let the witches go down!
She orders the Brethren to prevent the two from getting on the elevator, claiming that they work with the demon. Sybil fights them off with her billy club, and after Rose makes it onto the elevator, Sybil forces the door closed so Rose can find her daughter. Honestly, the scene pisses me off because it's like Sybil just gives up. She had the upper hand, and as soon as the doors closed, she stopped fighting. She could have totally gotten in the elevator too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The demon activates the elevator, and as Rose plunges down into the dark basement of the hospital, Sybil is nearly beaten to death by the Brethren. Now, knowing what Rose's daughter looks like, Christabella has a good idea of where she really is. The demon doesn't have the child, her sister Dahlia does. So the group break into Nathan's drugstore to capture Dahlia and Sharon, who's been safe in her abode for the entire movie, and bring them both to the church to purify Sharon with fire because that worked so well the first time around.
The truth is clear to those who see. Just as I could see, you hit this child.
Rose makes it past a large horde of nurses, where she makes it into a hospital room with the so-called demon, the little girl who looks just like Alessa, a burned adult woman in a hospital bed, and a pretty nurse who will not face Rose. She's treated to a bright white light and a big old information dump shown via 8mm clips and narrated by the demon.
Congratulations, Rose. You're here. You did it. Your reward is the truth.
30 years ago, Alessa was a normal girl, but she was being bullied in school. She's called a witch because of her school, and a lot of the town are very religious people, and well, Dahlia wouldn't name Alessa's father, so that makes Alessa sinful. One day, Alessa hides from her classmates who were tormenting her in a school bathroom, and she's molested by a janitor. After this incident, Christabella convinces Dahlia they must purify her to get rid of the sin, which essentially meant burning Alessa alive in a ritual.
We know. Even the children know it. Your daughter. Why you won't just name the father? You've brought sin amongst us. The faithful must gather in judgment, for we are called to purify this field.
What does she mean, Mommy?
You're weak, my dear sister. You always will. Trust us, Dahlia. Have faith in our virtue. We will restore innocence.
As soon as Dahlia lets Alessa go into the ceremony held in a secret room in the Grand Hotel, she has a change of heart and runs to get Officer Gucci, who has not aged in 30 years. But they return too late. Yeah, he looks the same. They could have added, I don't know, gray hair, wrinkles. He looks the same.
I didn't realize that until just now.
Alessa was burned alive, but in the process, she ended up knocking over this basin with all this coal that was used to burn her.
You should be careful how you fight evil.
And our unity.
Your weapons can turn back on you.
Which started a big fire, and then which led to Silent Hill's evacuation. I'm not exactly sure how the fire got to the coal seam. I think, magic. Alessa's brought to the hospital, where she suffers in intensive care with third-degree burns and is very, very angry about what happened to her. I mean, who could blame her? Her anger summons this entity that's taken the form of Alessa and led Rose all around the key locations in town during the film, and offers to make them pay, which is when the Brethren become trapped within the alternate dimension of Silent Hill, trapped in Alessa's nightmarish dreams. Years later, the remaining goodness within Alessa manifests as a baby, which is Sharon, and was dropped off by the entity at an orphanage to live in safety outside the Hell world. Well, that didn't really work because the baby came back, unfortunately. This entity demon thing has wanted to get at the Brethren for 30 years now, but they've been protected by their faith and their church, so it cannot reach them.
For over 30 years, they've lied to their own souls. For 30 years, they've denied their own fate. But now is the end of days, and I am the Reaper.
What do you want?
All we ask for is satisfaction.
Satisfaction?
Revenge.
The demon tells Rose that Christabella will find Sharon, and when she does, she plans to purify her. Wanting to save Sharon, Rose agrees to merge with the demon to get her inside the church so they can no longer hide from their past sins. Rose returns to the church where Sybil was just burned alive, and they're going to burn Sharon next.
You darkened the heart of an innocent, and now you cower in the face of Alessa's revenge.
Heresy. Burn her! Burn her!
Your faith brings death!
You are alone in this limbo, and God is not here.
Christabella stabs Rose in the heart, and this goo starts pouring out of her. It touches the floor, and the floor starts to peel away and become an otherworld version of Silent Hill that we all know and love. Now free from Rose's body and inside the church, the demon wreaks havoc. Behind Rose, up comes the adult Alessa in her hospital bed, ready to take her revenge. Rose wraps her daughter and tries to shield her while Alessa mutilates everyone in sight with barbed wire. It's very gross. Basically rips them apart.
It's awesome.
It's gross.
It explodes them.
Yeah, Christabella gets fucked literally by barbed wire. Jesus.
And the blood runs out.
And then the little demon Alessa is like dancing in the rain of the blood.
Yeah.
So gross.
Yeah.
So basically rips everyone apart, leaving only Rose, Sharon, and Dahlia.
Why did she not take me with the others?
Because you're her mother. Mother is God in the eyes of a child.
So adult Alessa had no ill will towards her own mother, so she spared her. The demon entity, whatever version of Alessa, it has many. I think the entity says it goes by many names, but so I've been calling it kind of a demon because that's what Christabella refers to it, but we don't actually know what it is. Makes eye contact with Sharon, and there's a moment when it seems like the demon enters Sharon's body, maybe takes over because she kind of zones out. Rose is finally able to leave Silent Hill, but the fog world follows her all the way back home.
Christopher, it's me. I'm with Sharon.
Hello? Hello? Rose? Rose?
We're coming home.
It's clear that even though she's left, she's still trapped in another dimension. Christopher comes back home after being basically thrown out of town for causing trouble for Officer Gucci, breaking into record buildings, and harassing a nun at an orphanage, trying to learn more about Silent Hill secrets. He feels Rose's presence, but again, they're separated in different dimensions, so they can't reunite, and that's how it ends.
That's Silent Hill.
Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it.
I glossed over some stuff.
That's basically it, though.
Yeah, you got the gist.
If you want the full thing, watch the movie, guys.
Yeah, you've had 14 years.
Yeah, but that's the gist of it. Hey guys, Future Whitney editing the podcast here. I just wanted to give a heads up. The audio for my guests gets a little robotic sometimes. This is because I was recording our Discord conversation, and sometimes the connection drops in quality for some reason. Unfortunately, I didn't have everyone record on their end, so this is the only audio I had to work with. I didn't realize how frequent it was while we were recording, so I just wanted to give an apology. Hopefully, it's not too distracting. The development of this film is rather interesting. The project was greenlit in September 2003, so the story is actually supposed to take place in 2004. It started filming in April 2005 and was released in April 2006. It was filmed in Super 35 film format, except scenes with the darkness, which were filmed in high-definition video. It did very well. It opened in 2,932 theaters and earned $20 million domestically on its opening weekend. It even opened at number 1 in the US box office. The film grossed over $46 million domestically and $100 million total worldwide. Very, very good for a video game film.
Especially one that was objectively obscure in the grand scheme of things.
So I think we've all heard the story. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but Christophe Gans convinced,
I believe so, yeah.
Konami for the rights of the game, right?
Yep.
He made like an impassionate video, and it moved them to allow him to try to make the movie. Well, in a new interview with Gans in the Shout Factory's collector's edition of the film, he gave a little bit more background. Apparently, Gans wasn't the only person interested in the film rights. According to him, so was it Miramax and Tom Cruise's production company. Could you imagine a Tom Cruise-led Silent Hill film?
I mean, I think that would be great. Like, just like halfway through the movie, he's like the Mission Impossible theme plays, and he's trying to induct everyone into Scientology, and Harry's talking about fucking phaetons and whatnot. That is random, though. I did not know that.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I didn't even know Tom Cruise had a production company, and then I looked it up, and I was like, oh, it was established in 93. Okay. It was supposed to help him, like, pick his movies he wanted to do or whatever, but...
You know, he could actually do Harry, though, right? Like, he kind of looked...
I mean, he's easy to make fun of, but at least personally, I don't think he's that bad of an actor. I would have been curious to see what he'd do. Probably would not have been as good, but it would have been memorable at the very least.
It probably would have gotten more funding, right? I mean, he's such a big star.
Yeah. Sure, but I do think that the part of the reason the first movie works, at least for me, is that it isn't some giant Hollywood production. It has just as much budget as it needed.
Yeah, it's a French film.
The only actor I recognized from that movie when I first saw it was Christabella, because she was in Star Trek.
She's
oh my god,
the Borg Queen.
Yeah, she was the Borg Queen, and that was I'm like, it wasn't until she came up on screen. I don't even know the actress's name, but I'm just like, it's the Borg Queen. What's she doing here?
You recognize Sean Bean, though, right?
Or something like that?
Oh, you're right.
Alice Creed,
Sean Bean. What the hell am I thinking?
Him too.
Yeah,
I knew
Sean Bean goes without saying.
Alice Cridge is the actress's name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I knew the two of them, and then retroactively, here's a fun Resident Evil connection for everyone. The actor that plays Gucci, Kim Coates, is also in Resident Evil Afterlife, which is obviously in retrospect. He's like, oh, it's the guy from Silent Hill.
I didn't realize. Oh, I have not seen some of the Resident Evil movies for a while.
He plays this shitty Hollywood movie producer that ends up selling everyone out to Wesker at the end of the movie.
Oh, okay.
And I also rewatched the PSP UMD Silent Hill Experience interviews with Gans and Yamaoga's on there too. But but I did think Gans wanted. I mean, he meant well with it. You know, he really.
Yeah. He had a vision.
Yeah. I mean, there was some hate for it, so I just.
Oh, there'll always be hate.
Yeah, it's a given.
Yeah, there was no way to please everyone with that movie.
Especially in Silent Hill.
No, I gotta say, in his interview in the Shout Factory release, he has rose-colored glasses on the reception to his film. More on that in just a little bit. But, so, yeah, he wanted to kind of get ahead of the competition, so I guess he kind of knew others were eager to get the rights, so that's where he sent the developers a video where he, quote, made long and precise statements about how I thought Silent Hill could and should be brought to the screen. I had all this section, a good 40 minutes, in fact, subtitled in Japanese, and I sent it to the creators of the game. They saw the video and were super enthusiastic. Gans thinks that because they could see he was in, Gans, he got it because they could see he was in tune with them, with like the feelings about Silent Hill.
Yeah, he had a love for it.
Yeah, but let's rewind just a bit. I found Gans' thoughts on video games in general was pretty cool, and it kind of explains why his adaptation, while flawed, is still considered to be a great video game film. So, after he completed Crying Freeman, which is a 1995 film adaptation of a manga series, which is apparently pretty good, I haven't seen it myself, he got himself a PlayStation 1 and fell under its spell. He had only played PC games before, and he quotes, "Stayed home a week, locked in, hardly eating, hardly washing, playing non-stop the Tomb Raider and Resident Evil games." He had a realization then that cinema was going to have an unexpected competitor in the form of these games, but was comforted that when Crying Freeman was released in France, the film magazines only gave it lip service while the video game magazines supported it, quote, like hell. He found that his work was being much better understood by gamers than by moviegoers, and thanks to this, he thought, what I'll try to do in the future will have something to do with video games. Which turned out to be Silent Hill, which is kind of strange when it was a game that was hardly played in France. Well, according to this story by Gans. Apparently, he did a master class in a huge department store after his Silent Hill film released, and people from Sony were in the audience. At the end, they went up to him and they asked him if he had any idea how many Silent Hill games had been pressed in France. He, of course, had no idea and was surprised to learn it was only 150. Wow. Yes, 150 copies, and he now owned 2 of them. He had, quote, adapted an ultra-famous game which nobody actually played in France. So many people were looking forward to seeing a film based on a game hardly played by anybody. I found it a little strange that it was such a small pressing, like at 150 copies, is it even worth it? But I thought it was funny, so I just had to include that story. It just seems like such a small number to even bother pressing in the country. He could be exaggerating. I don't know. I didn't try to fact check him, but
yeah, it just reminds me of like how Roger Ebert was talking about video games not being art, but that brings me to like when I interviewed the game company Tale of Tales, and they were actually on Ebert's side because they do art games, and I think what they were actually saying is that because it's interactive is a different kind of art, and I think Roger Ebert just sort of misspoke is the whole thing there.
Yeah, I could see that. I think the video games as art, like whole discourse, is very tiring because everybody takes it to the extremes. There's like no nuance in this discussion. Like you're taking what Ebert said at face value. You're not kind of trying to see it from his point of view. Anyway, but
well, to quote the greatest thinker of our era, Shia LaBeouf, anything that moves you is art.
Yes, I agree with that.
It's like one of those things that like art is totally subjective, so don't like I wouldn't worry about it. Like the fact that how many famous movie critics even now acknowledge video games, like even talk about it. At least Ebert like entertained talking about it, you know?
Well, I think he was saying they are art. It's just that they were a different kind.
Yeah, no, it's like
when I go back and like look through what his writings were and watch the movie on him and so on.
And it makes sense. I mean, the interaction itself brings like a whole nother like realm. You're not passively watching something. It's
an evolution of art.
Yeah, you're taking part. You have more of a stake in what's happening on screen other than just passively sitting there. So I think that's why video games especially have kind of taken hold with at least people who've grown up with them. There's a deeper connection, I think, for a lot of people because of that interactivity with it. And I think, like you said, it's just a different type of art.
And Actually, you should probably continue before I get into what I'm going to say. So, Go ahead.
So let's see where I say. From the interview with Gans, it's clear he feels he shared a similar mindset with the developers since they were also film buffs. According to him, they reflected a lot of their passion for Lynch and Jacob's Ladder, and the result was their terrifying game. He felt they shared the same sort of hybrid drive. They were just on the other side of the river. So he tried to do Silent Hill not as a conventional adaptation, but as a notebook of his journeys. He says journeys because after playing Silent Hill, he didn't feel that he had played, he felt he had visited. He spent a part of his life in this awful place. He knew every street corner, knew everything by heart. So for him, the aim was to convey that experience and not so much to adapt a video game. Silent Hill does not fit into the usual horror film format with all the jump scares. It's not a horror film, it's a nightmare. In reminiscing, he said, my films was well received by all the fans of the original game. It was the fans... I know. I laughed.
All 150 of them.
Yeah.
It was... I'm glad you guys had the same reaction I did.
Yeah.
What's he going to say, though? Everyone hated it,
Yeah.
For his interview?
Yeah. It was the fans of conventional horror films who complained about the lack of jump scares, which I don't really remember, but whatever. But jump scares would have been out of place in a Silent Hill nightmare, in that slanted, weird vision of a place, in that journey into a bad dream. So... I remember that this wasn't necessarily the case, at least in my corner of fandom. I remember a lot of people being disappointed at how different the film was from the game. I was one of them.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I was impressed with the look and the sound of the film. It definitely felt like Silent Hill, but what about you guys? Do you remember the love? Maybe negativity just sticks with me more. I don't know.
No,
Yeah, I agree.
I think that at the time it was really hated by fans of the games, at least like on forums and stuff. But I feel like over time people have come to appreciate it.
Yeah, especially after the sequel.
At the time, I would describe the general reaction to be a recoil.
It's kind of a strange adaptation, I find, in the sense that like a lot of like scenes from Silent Hill 1 are just like recreated like one for one almost.
Yeah.
But a lot of the context around them is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Like
this is
that's
it's a reimagining kind of in a way.
Yeah. I mean, like that whole sequence when Rose like runs into the Grey Children, it's like exactly the same as when Harry goes down into the alley.
Yeah.
And then again, it's just like, like the broad strokes are much different. Like Dahlia's character's completely different.
The antagonist is different. I mean, the cult isn't even there. The cult from the game is different. Though they tried to turn it into the cult from the game in the sequel, and it just does not work.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
I think compared to most of the stories, compared to most of the other like video game adaptations, like even like Mortal Kombat or something fairly simple, I think the movie gets the broad strokes fairly close to the game. I think you can look at the movie and look at the game and go, oh, okay, like it's about a parent going to a town to search for their child. And then you obviously it diverges. Like with Dahlia and Christabel, it's almost like they split her character into two.
Mm-hmm.
They did, yeah.
So they could have Dahlia be a redeemable character. Yeah.
This is something, and I don't want to go off on a tangent about a movie that's not out yet. But the Silent Hill movie has been something I've been referencing a lot in relation to the new Resident Evil film, Welcome to Raccoon City, which I'm already seeing getting fuckloads of hate because it's just like, why does Birkin look so old? And like, why isn't Wesker wearing his sunglasses? And all this needless...
The important things.
It's like, meanwhile, the movie is like, it's rebuilt the Spencer mansion almost brick for brick.
Mm-hmm.
And we can see that the RPD exterior is quite literally rebuilt brick for brick. It's a physical set they made, just like insane to me in comparison to the previous movies where the RPD building was a sign they glued onto the side of a bank. It's like And obviously the movie isn't out yet. It still has every opportunity to be shit, but it's reminding me a lot of the first Silent Hill in that with film adaptions of pretty much anything other than like a novel where it can be pretty one-to-one, and even then, I think gamers, quote unquote, need to lighten up to a degree with video game movies. Obviously, there are things like the previous Resident Evil movies and the Alone in the Dark movie, and just shitloads of just unwatchable dreck. But with things like the first Silent Hill movie, I find it really bizarre that people can look at the first Silent Hill, which tries really hard with its atmosphere and its sound and recreating scenes, but also tells a story that's comprehensible to non-game fans. Because Silent Hill 1's like an 8 or 9 hour long game for your first time through, and there's journals and diaries, and there's like hours and hours of cutscenes and all this shit that establishes the world that we know. Movie's only like an hour and a half long. It doesn't have time for any of that. So it has to be able to please game fans, but also not be just a word salad for normal people.
Yes.
And I find it frustrating that you'll see gamers get mad about something that's clearly trying as hard as it can, like the first Silent Hill movie, while, and this is going to sound like a very personal axe. Oh, Puppo. This is going to sound like a very personal axe. Things like The Dark Knight, the Batman film, which is objectively a terrible adaptation. Like, Joker's nothing like the Joker. Two-Face doesn't have a split personality. His origin's completely different. There's giant swaths of shit in that movie that literally couldn't be less like the source material, but it's generally considered to be one of the best superhero movies ever made because it's a good movie.
Is the Dark Knight movie supposed to be an adaptation of the book?
I mean, yeah, it's a combination of The Long Halloween and The Dark Knight Returns and a bunch of other things. And it's also Batman.
I don't think October meant The Dark Knight Returns, if that was what you were asking.
Oh, okay.
It takes inspiration from a bunch of different Batman comics. There's a couple scenes that are like not word for word, but clearly meant to be scenes from things like The Long Halloween, like Batman, Harvey, and Gordon talking on the roof about all the crime boss stuff like that.
Right.
But it's like
not one singular adaptation.
Not one singular adaptation.
Right.
But the point being is that it's a beloved movie, even though you can point to pretty much anything about it and be like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Even just in like a broad stroke of like who these characters are meant to be. Just with my favorite one being Batman doesn't kill people and the movie ends with him throwing a man off a building. So,
yeah, I think it's just people don't understand that there are different media and you have to do them differently.
Adaptions have to change things. The important thing is it trying to be the feeling of what it's adapting.
I'm kind of of two minds with this, and I don't know if I wanted to get quite into what I'm about to say, but I might as well. Where I think that the Silent Hill movie, because I watched it again last night for the first time in quite a while, and I think probably what I would. The interesting thing is I do think video game movies have, as a whole, gotten a lot better. Like, you have things like Detective Pikachu and Sonic that are actually like yes, they're not direct adaptations, but they're like, these are like quality movies, like well sound films. Like, it's a lot different from the like early 2000s. And I think that one thing I like about the Silent Hill movie, because for a long time it was considered the best video game adaptation. And one thing I think that has aged a lot better about it compared to like the first Resident Evil movie is like there is some artistry to how it's made. There's a lot of incredible cinematography. It's aged. The only thing that's not aged well is some of the CGI, but like, what can you do? It just looks like for example, like the first Resident Evil movie. Something that I think has aged terribly about it is like all the Matrix influence, like the bullet time and stuff. I mean, like, you can tell it's a movie from like 2003. Whereas you could show someone the Silent Hill movie, and other than the fact that they're using fucking like shitty old cell phones, like it looks like a contemporary film still. And the one thing I would say though, because again, I like this movie, but I also do it does do one thing that I think it doesn't. It misses kind of like the most important thing about the original Silent Hill to me. And I said this kind of on the Shattered Memories podcast we did, but to me, the original Silent Hill, like its quote unquote message is like family is who you make it. And because, Cheryl or Heather, whoever you want to say, is not literally Harry's daughter. They're not blood related, but it's his daughter. And it's a story of, families and how important your parents can be, whoever you want them to be. And like that family is more than just blood. And then the message of the movie is God in the eye, which is, I'm just going to say it, complete bullshit.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
That's the complete, just in real life, it's bullshit. And it's the complete opposite message of the game. That would be where I would say I think that the movie drops the ball. I do think it's a well-made movie. Like, again, like if you compare it to like, I don't know what the other contemporary video game movies are at the time, but mostly
Alone in the Dark one.
Yeah, stuff like that. Just like lots of junk. Like it is a well-made movie. In fact, I really love it up until it gets to all the witch burning stuff. Then I'm like, please stop.
Yeah.
See, I took that totally differently.
Oh.
Like the message of the movie.
Okay.
Oh, really? Go ahead.
I mean, I took it as Gans had a different message. While I agree with you about the message of Silent Hill 1, and that, Cheryl is Harry's daughter, even though they're not blood relatives. I took the message of the movie to be going more into the people can be, how to say?
Led astray, or?
Yeah, people can be like led astray into religious cults and things and do bad things without meaning to.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. You could see that just in Dahlia's sort of like, oh, fuck, what did I do moment in the flashback.
That and Alessa just like having been through a bunch of bad things, that she starts doing bad things to other people. So it becomes like the hurt people meme.
A vicious cycle type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, no, that's valid. That's a good point.
I think Rose's actions still reflect Harry's intent and motivation in the game. You can argue they dropped the ball in terms of the messaging at the end and that line, but I think Rose still has the same motivation to save Sharon that Harry did to save Cheryl.
Yeah.
Both of them were not related by blood, but Rose was just as determined to find Sharon and help her, even at the cost of welcoming a demon, like agreeing to all, going into the church and agreeing to kind of
be the
house the demon to get into the church. So she's almost willing to damn herself just to save Sharon. So I think, for me at least, that message still tracks.
Sorry to go off track, but is it just me, or are they basically insinuating that the little girl, the evil Alessa is Satan? Because that's what I've always thought it was supposed to be.
They don't come out. They don't come out and say it. And I even went to the Wikia, and they're like, "There's misconceptions that the whatever is actual Satan." But the thing is, it's supposed to be, I guess, something else. That's why I keep saying entity.
I took it as more like she was just split into two, and a good part and a bad part that does like violence.
The way I always took it is that, I mean, they kind of make
a vengeful part.
There's there's the actual Alessa in her breathing chamber thing where she's all fucked up, and then the little girl approaches, puts her hand on the side, and they make a pact. Yeah, the little girl made a little deal with the devil or something. It feels really clear to me.
Maybe it's her powers manifesting.
A projection of her.
Yeah, maybe she had these powers. They're kind of locked in. She was like.
That's not the text of the film, though. The film shows us a separate entity walking up to her little tent.
Yeah.
And them choosing to bond,
because it's not a book.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that trying to find an explanation that fits with the games and fits with giving her some sort of power is not what the film shows.
I always took it to be just a demon. I never I think it's on the surface level. I just assumed it was a demon.
I think it's one of those things that you're not really supposed to know. It's just a mystery. It's like
let me read the Wikia's answer. I think.
Oh boy!
One second.
When Cheryl was circumcised.
No. Okay. No, because they have like a little section. Because, like I said before, I think the Silent Hill Wiki is a very good research tool. I use it a lot when I need to find kind of like a starting place when I make these podcasts. Like it's like, okay, what do I want to talk about? Let me read through the page, and I'll see if I can find these other sources myself and come up with my own, thoughts. So I'm laughing, but I'm laughing because of some of the ridiculous stuff that you could find on these pages, but I still think it's a very good resource. They said here, misconceptions. There are several popular misconceptions about the film's story. Here are some of them clarified. One was about Rose, Sharon, and Sybil dying at the beginning of the film. Next one, Dark Alessa is Devil, Satan, Lucifer. Dark Alessa is often confused as being a literal incarnation of the Christian devil. The confusion is so widespread that director Christophe Gans commented on the film's commentary. I'm assuming this is the French commentary, which is in the Metropolitan Collector's Edition. There hasn't been an English commentary, saying that the character is meant to be seen from a Japanese perspective, the Japanese form of a devil, the dark side of the human soul, not a Christian one. So that kind of works with that being like a darker aspect of Alessa that maybe was unleashed due to the horrible experience she went through. Like,
that's how I saw it.
My question is, what would be the point of having a Christian Satan as that demon?
I think
to what end?
I think the only reason, and I thought this when I was watching it, it's just that one really stereotypical line, I have many names. Like,
Yeah, it's exactly that.
Who is she?
She is Alessa.
Then who are you?
I have many names. Right now, I'm the dark part of Alessa.
Yeah, it's
my name is Legion.
I mean, I never took it as like, oh, it's the Christian version of like it's Lucifer. It's like, no, it's evil.
I think it's a misconception.
Man.
I think it's a misconception by Christian fans, is all.
Yeah,
if they are not familiar with maybe some other influences.
They made it too subtle. They should have just gave her horns. Come on now.
There we go.
I think it's one of that, like, particularly though, that line is something that happens in a lot of horror media.
And it's usually the devil, a demon, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think Regan in The Exorcist says something like that.
I was about to say.
Like it's a cliche, and I think that's what kind of throws people off.
He also says, "I'm the devil." Himself at one point.
Yeah, and Lisa's uniform is based on The Exorcist 3 nurse and that. Yeah, we're on that topic. I made a video on that. I had to watch all these movies again.
That's a good movie.
So you guys were mentioning when you were talking October, especially when you were talking about how when films are made, they need to make some concessions for the general audience. Well, Gans actually kind of talked about in this interview. He said while reflecting on the process of adapting this film, he talked a bit about the paradox you find yourself in when adapting a powerful work like Silent Hill. On the one hand, you must meet fans' expectation and their pressures, especially with social networks, which is only really worse now. I mean, he had it a little bit because the internet was kind of kicking off and people were having forums and all that stuff. On the other hand, you must open it up without betraying the original spirit for an audience that's not familiar with the subject. And this audience, to a large extent, is reflected by the executives. Taking the point of view of an outsider, they wonder very legitimately, why does this look this way? Why is it so dark? Why? So you have to decide what compromises you should make and to what extent. And in Silent Hill's case, Gans yielded on one point for the executives. He initially wanted to make, quote, a universe of women because of the witches. I thought it would be interesting to make an all-female film. TriStar apparently insisted that Gans underline the character of the father and put him where the action was, with a male detective by his side. So
Bloody cop.
So Gans beefed up his presence, though it was in contradiction with his original concept. He went with it because, he quotes, I quote, "I could see the Orpheus side of the story would be reinforced, an echo of Cocteau's film. So to speak, the husband goes down to the inferno in search of his wife. There's a scene totally plucked up, but which I like a lot, the scene where he smells her perfume. He only smells her perfume because she walks past him in a parallel dimension. This scene justifies the compromise I had to make, at least for me." Which is actually one of the few scenes I do like from the Sean Bean side of things.
Rose!
Put your mask on.
Rose! Where are you?
I found her.
Your what?
Her perfume. She was here.
Who was?
My wife.
She wasn't here. Put this mask on.
Perfume.
Breathe. Through that mask. Come on, let's go. We're gonna go this way. Chris, come on.
She was here.
No,
She was
she
here.
wasn't here.
I know.
It's well known that this compromise was made, and he's actually pretty amused by the fan cuts of the film, where all of Sean Bean's scenes are edited out and called the true version of Silent Hill.
A lot of, I mean, I think most of us agree that a lot of Sean Bean's scenes just like break the flow of the movie.
They're very wheel spinning. I think other than just the coolness of the them existing in the same place at the same time in a school, which is just like, it's just a cool moment.
Yeah.
They're pretty much useless.
I like the scenes on their own, and I think if I had to pick a favorite, I like when he breaks in to get the records, because that's connected to the story, that's moving the plot along, and he's trying to get to the bottom of why Sharon, where Sharon came from.
Yeah.
But they break the flow more than anything else. I mean, yeah, they stop the movie, but it's also like when you're trying to make this kind of Alice in Wonderland nightmare, and you like break and you go somewhere else, you've woken up from the nightmare. So it's not this one constant thing.
Yeah.
I actually went up to a movie theater last night and saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on the big screen for the second time, and that's a nightmare from start to finish. It ramps up, and when you get to a certain point in that movie, it's a living nightmare. And when the end credits start, every time I see that movie, whether it's on the big screen or not, I just exhale. Like,
it's like, oh, it's over.
You know? Yeah. And I think when you have, it's almost like if you had like, I don't know how many of you guys have seen the first Texas Chainsaw, but if you had interstitial stuff like that where they cut to a sheriff who's, which they kind of doing too, but they cut to a sheriff who's like looking for these teens, and you're like, okay, well, depending on how good those are, that's one thing, but like you're still cutting away from the nightmare.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest crime that the Sean Bean stuff did, is, you get zapped out of it.
Yeah,
now,
I
love the concept of an all-female. I mean, if you've seen the recent, I think it's 2017, 2018, Suspiria, that's just about a almost all-female, all the main characters are female at least, except the one which is also sort of she's the actress is female playing a male. But that's a cool concept. I like that idea.
But yeah, I interviewed Paul Partain from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, but I was gonna say that it's a problem like in so many films that, if you're making it for two different audiences, like I remember when the Frank Zappa film came out that Alex Winter made, that, fans complained because it all the stuff we already knew, but it was also made for non-fans.
Yeah, it's kind of I'd probably say like the toughest. I'd say the script of the movie is overall pretty good. I think personally, what I think is like, I don't want to say lazy, but the most awkward part is just the like big exposition dump. Like,
That's the
Alessa was
worst.
a witch. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like fucking the devil is showing Rose like her TikTok and like this is what happened like all these years ago, and it's just a really clumsy moment where
It
it's
should have
just
been
like
spread out, I think. Like,
yeah,
you know
that's
how
what
Rose like falls unconscious a lot? Why can't we see like a snippet? Like
or
the
when
entity's
she's
trying
in the
to
school.
Yeah.
See, yeah, you see that where she's getting bullied in the school, like where it's all at once. It's just like it's just going to sound like a really weird parallel to draw, but I recently watched the David Lynch's Dune, which is a horrible movie, and like
it's got great music though.
I mean, it's got great stuff in it, but it's mostly bad. And like the opening of it is just one big exposition dump, and that's always like my least favorite thing in like any movie.
Are you talking about the girl at the beginning?
Yeah, it's like Arrakis, the center of the universe.
Yeah, I love that because on the soundtrack, that's in there. That her whole speech, it's like 3.5 minutes before you get to any actual music. Just listening to her ramble.
That shit's great. I love that movie. I don't care.
that's
unpopular opinion. I grew up with it, and then I found out people didn't like it later on, and all your arguments are just cornflakes.
I think it's a gorgeous movie. I think it's got a great cast. I think it has an amazing soundtrack, especially because it's by the Rains Down in Africa people somehow.
Toto?
I've never read Dune.
Toto,
yeah.
What? I didn't know this.
Yeah, Toto.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jealous was Blade Runner.
Yeah, McGillis was Blade Runner. But I think it's a really fun time. I've never read the book. And I've come to learn.
That's the thing. People are like, "Oh, the movie's terrible." It's like, well, that's the book. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's a confusing concept, but like, that's an epic book. So it's like when I hear 3 minute, 3 minute. How long was the opening, the prologue for Lord of the Rings? Imagine not having that in that movie. You have no context for anything. So. It serves a purpose.
To try and bring it back to Silent Hill, I do think that I just think that those kind of exposition dumps they're just not like I'm watching this and it's like, and then Alessa, she wasn't like other girls and all of this, and I'm like, well, why did this all at once? Like, why?
It's weird because that screenwriter wrote Pulp Fiction, right?
He did, yeah. Actually, Silent Hill had an Academy Award-winning
and Killing Zoe. I think I'm not sure if he directed that one too, but
I think it's just like I think what Whitney said was perfect. Like they should have just had it sprinkled throughout the movie and make it more of a mystery. Like I'm imagining the scene where they're all saying "burn the witch" to Alessa in the school. That flashback should have been when she was in the damn school. Like in the movie,
they did show like a little bit of a flashback,
yeah,
but not to the extent.
I'm watching it last night. It's such a like. I struggle. I think I probably like it the least of everyone here, but I do respect it quite a bit because I think it tries really hard. Even if
I wonder if that exposition dump is maybe a side effect of. And I don't want to harp on this because this is an easy excuse, but like a executive kind of thing where like, well, people won't get it,
Actually,
like,
yeah.
All right.
That happened in Dark City too.
Dark City is the worst for that.
Well,
I love that movie, but
if you want to get down to it, the explanation of Norman Bates at the end of Psycho is debatably pretty bad.
Oh yeah, it's also very, very bad.
This is why he did it.
So he actually touched upon that scene. He was talking about the Super 8 film segment. He felt it was worth telling. So he originally had a scene kind of describing what happened to Alessa, much more elaborate, more complicated, and it would have been more expensive. It was too expensive. After shooting, some of the parts were missing, so they were in to do some like reshoots for like additional footage to fill out those scenes. But then he came up with the idea of showing Alessa's fate that could look like a fragment of a lost film, like a Super 8 film, incomplete, with some elements unexplained. So he actually had another person, Kook Uwo, I don't know if I'm saying the name right, who designed the credits to all of his films. He asked him to create a Super 8 film just using the scenes he had shot. And kind of put something together so no additional shooting was necessary. I think they were running out of time and budget by this point. So that's kind of why it's there. I mean,
That
the
makes
look,
sense.
the look is good, and I could see, okay, it's incomplete. I still think it would have been better if it was broken up, because all at once is just like, why isn't this something we could have learned while Rose was exploring? Why?
And that's
all
like,
that?
feels like a
that's
commercial
like
in the middle.
5 or 7 minutes, right? That's not a short scene either.
No, it's not. It goes on for a while.
Right.
Because it goes to white and you're like, oh, we're back. It comes back to Rose.
Yeah, and I kind of want to go back a little bit to what he said about wanting a female. So he mentioned he wanted to make this female film, but I have to say his views on Harry Mason wasn't cool.
Oh
They're-
no, they
it's
fucking
kinda-
they fucking suck. I'm not even gonna outfight anyone that says they aren't.
There was an official Silent Hill blog that was up a few months before the film's release where fan questions were answered. You can actually find it archived over on the great fan site SilentHillMemories.net. I will make sure to put a link to it in the notes for the show on the Silent Hill Historical Society website. One fan asked why he didn't stick with Harry Mason as the main character, and he wrote, "It quickly became clear, however, Harry never acted like a masculine character. He was constantly dizzy, feigning, talking to himself, screaming, and in fact was very vulnerable. We didn't want to portray the nature of the game by changing the character's feelings and motivations, so we felt it was better to change to a female protagonist and retain all those important qualities."
This is a problem with France and gender roles, I think.
I don't want people to think I have been politically correct because we changed Harry into Rose. There's no political correctness in Silent Hill. No shit. Your views on what men can do is pretty awful. So it's important to mention that we were conscious that allowing the gamers to have face a new character will help in the transition from Silent Hill the game to Silent Hill the movie. So they use the excuse that, a new face, they won't get hung up on their preconceived notions of what should be in the movie. But I'm sorry, that is BS. Why can't men have those qualities? Be vulnerable.
Men can't have feelings, I guess. Men can't love their daughters.
I do agree about the distancing, because you're talking about concessions between, adaptations. I think that is a savvy way to go in terms of if you do want to separate the movie from the game, even though you're adapting the story, to change it for that. But yeah, and Amy, maybe you can speak more about that. It seems more of like a cultural thing. In France, the gender roles are messed up.
The thing that gets me, if he kept Harry, the studio wouldn't have made him force in all those Sean Bean scenes. There would have been the male presence.
Put the men in here.
They wanted all along.
It's such a, I don't know, I hate it so much. He might as well have just said, Harry was a cuck, and then he had to change it because he was
male.
Yeah, he was a beta. He was too libtard for him.
Oh, God. I just thought it was ridiculous. I'm like, what, men can't be vulnerable? What kind of bullshit is this? You would be screaming too.
Also,
I love Harry. What the hell?
Harry defeated a god with his handgun. What the fuck are you talking about? He's a badass.
I know. He took down a god, and he died like a man in his recliner. Watching TV.
And then his daughter was like, "I'm gonna go fuck up the devil because he fucked with my dad." His reasoning for doing it, it's just so bad. It's such a dated thing, and it's just
that's a Gans thing and not a Silent Hill thing, though.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
But what I also kind of found interesting was the ease Gans had working with the studio. Famously, we know that the film we got was the director's cut. So when he showed his cut of the film, a lot of the FX was missing, but people were pleased. But he was warned by his producer, Samuel Hadea, that he would get notes the following day and to be ready because at the same time, he was also producing Tony Scott's Domino. And when they showed the rough, he got 20 pages of notes. So he said that Gans should be ready to receive 40 pages because, it's a Silent Hill movie. Well, the next morning, when he got the notes from TriStar, it was hardly anything. It was just comments like Rhonda Mitchell's accent came through and we need a redub of her line. Little things, and his producer was like, "What the hell? you can't have so few notes when Tony gets so many. It's like, damn, dude. And
I like the idea of this big shot Hollywood person being like, that's not fair.
And then, so Gans thinks that he was spared like the usual Hollywood treatment because he was pretty clear about what he was going to do and what they would see. And when they saw his film, they weren't surprised. The film they saw is what he told them that they would see. So it wasn't like, oh, well, this wasn't what we thought. It was, oh, this is exactly what you said. So we don't understand it, but we trust you. So I want to move away from Gans. There are a few other things I wanted to touch on quickly. I know I'm talking quite a bit, but so we all know that the Silent Hill movie is famously based on Centralia, Pennsylvania, where
oh boy,
in the 60s,
just like the games, right?
Yeah.
I have a friend whose husband proposed to her.
Oh, there was a coal mine fire that's still burning to this day. Roger Avery, one of the writers on the film, there's actually 3, 2 were like really uncredited. Was doing some research on abandoned towns and discovered the story of Centralia, and it seemed like the perfect real-world version of Silent Hill. They used the town, its history, as a basis for their real-world Silent Hill, and then changed the state to West Virginia for legal reasons. Yeah, I wish they didn't do this, because every listicle likes to say that Silent Hill is now based on this, and it's like, no, it's just the movie.
The real Silent Hill.
I even had at one point, so I have a Let's Play of the first game, and this comment's been deleted, but I had this person get into an argument with me about how it wasn't snow in the game. It was ash.
Oh, God. Yeah, I had to make a whole video on it because I was like so upset about this.
And I'm like, no, Dr. Kaufman says it's snow. It's literally snow.
This time of year.
And ash doesn't melt.
Yeah. Also, so it's kind of annoying because I feel like every so often, like a new listicle comes out and they make these claims, and then people are like, "Hey, Whitney, look!" And I'm like, "Fuck you."
I actually did a story for VG247 on this. Yeah, I interviewed Whitney for it.
Yep.
And it's kind of one of those things that's like interesting how it's weaved back into the games themselves, though. Like Homecoming had cracks from a coal fire underground in it.
Yes, it did.
Like this didn't happen in the game story. Like this is something from the movie.
Well, that's something that's worth commenting on, and I'm sure we talked about it on the Homecoming podcast. I don't remember. But Homecoming has so much influence from this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And not just like, oh, Parenthood design. It's more than that. First of all, it is snowing ash in that game. There's no explanation. It just looks like ash. And they have the coal fire cracks around. And the church you go to is the church from the movie. It has the weird cross logo everywhere. And it's like the whole thing feels like... and admittedly, the Resident Evil games did this too. Were just inexplicably at the height of those movies' popularity. Resident Evil: The Umbrella Chronicles made the Red Queen and the Laser Hall cannon.
Yeah,
it's so weird. Like
in the Otherworld transition and nurses and stuff. And
in the Otherworld transition, the nurses and everything. It's like
I think it's
very strange.
I think it's one of those things that just. When I think about a lot of game development stuff, I imagine that the people making Homecoming probably literally had DVD copies of the movie, like as reference material. I bet you that's what it was.
Though I gotta admit, the transition was pretty cool. It's a shame they only used it like in the bathroom and then in that little hallway between the hotel and the atrium. And it's why can't you use it again somewhere else in the game, guys? No? Okay.
I think it's interesting because I think the movie, and forgive me if I'm going off on a tangent, but I think the movie does a good job at kind of, like we talked about how like Silent Hill isn't a jump scare thing. Silent Hill, I think, has a very unique brand of horror.
That's not to say that it doesn't have jump scares. It certainly does, but it's not its like main
thing. Yeah. But it's like, I feel like it does kind of... The weird thing about Silent Hill is it's all supernatural, but like there's not... I mean, until you get to like some of the later games. There's no like overt spirits or ghosts in that quite as what you would imagine they look like. Like, you know, Pyramid Head is like some sort of like spectral entity, but he's also just this buff ripped dude, and like it's a very unique aesthetic that I think they do mostly capture in the movie. I'm not gonna lie, like I remember seeing that movie for the first time in the theater, and the first time Pyramid Head comes around the corner, I'm like, oh my god, it's him. It's the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. It was me pointing at the screen. It was cool to see like some of that stuff. Like I know Pyramid Head is supposed to be part of James, but like if this is going to be the only, this is what I was thinking at the time, I should say, if this is going to be the only Silent Hill movie we get, and let's just see him just this once. Just do it. Fuck it. Yeah.
And still to date, we don't have a movie adaptation of 2 and 3 that, or Silent Hill 2. I mean, that probably is what the third movie is going to be, but we'll find out. But yeah, I don't know. Fuck it. It's cool. It's Pyramid Head. Why not? It's a cool visual.
Ironic.
It's service.
It's fan service. I would argue Pyramid Head's the only recognizable creature from this series to people that like aren't religiously fans. Why not? Fuck it.
It was weird because I felt like after this movie, like everybody knows who Pyramid Head is, you know, like even if they don't know Silent Hill, like he's very recognizable.
It made him like have mainstream appeal. Like they, you know, it's funny. I think I've mentioned this before, but I was on another podcast, Here's Johnny podcast, and they played through Silent Hill 1, and one of the hosts never played through it, and the series, and he knew the movie. So he went into Silent Hill 1 thinking that Pyramid Head was going to be like a nemesis character and something that would stalk Harry throughout the game. And he was extremely disappointed to find out that this wasn't the case. And I thought it was funny because a lot of people actually only know him from the Silent Hill movie because it's so accessible compared to Silent Hill 2.
DLC of him, you know.
I mean,
pops in and everything now. He's in Dead by Daylight. He was in some mobile games from Konami.
PlayStation Home.
Yeah.
He's in a DS baseball game.
Yeah.
The nurses are the same.
Konami Crazy Kart Racing.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
I love that.
The nurses are the same way. Like they're like the most iconic Silent Hill things.
Whenever I go to horror conventions, it's Pyramid Head and the nurses. It's usually the nurses because that's kind of an easy costume to do. But I usually see at least one nurse and one Pyramid Head.
Yeah, and it was just kind of cool seeing those things on the screen. That was kind of like my visceral reaction. It's like, other than I thought it was dumb that Pyramid Head can wield a giant sword to cut through a door, but he can't move the like tiny bar to unhinge.
I know.
They shot him. He got little bullet holes in his arm.
He was trying, and like, I mean, keep in mind I was like in like the 9th grade or whatever, but like I do have to admit that when he kills that one girl, I was like, that was awesome.
The skin ripping, yeah.
I still haven't watched that scene. I always look away.
No?
Yeah, I can't.
It looks good. Like it's a good effect.
I can't handle gore, guys. I always look away.
I know a lot of the subtlety of Silent Hill 2 is not there, but again, fuck it, he's there. He did some Mortal Kombat fake with this girl for some reason, but whatever.
Pyramid Head in Mortal Kombat, though.
You know that he was supposed to be in it more? Like, in the original script, the end scene was that Alessa was going to call forth like a whole bunch of Pyramid Heads to go to town on the religious people.
I'm glad she didn't.
Yeah. It was going to be different. There's like some storyboard art or something that's been released, and of course the original version of the script before it was like rewritten. But I was like, you know, if they had that ending, I think his appearance in the second movie would have made a little bit more sense as Alessa's protector.
Yeah. Or he's supposed to be her protector.
Yeah. As it stands now, it was kind of still like a what? Since when was he Alessa's protector? I didn't get that feeling in the first movie. But if they had that end sequence, I guess it kind of would have worked. But they didn't. And Kyle, when you said about the pointing at the screen, like Leonardo DiCaprio, I mean, that was me with the entire going into the dark alley. I was like,
right.
That's probably one of my favorite scenes. But that's literally, we're talking about 1-to-1.
Yeah.
I love how you get the transition, but it's right at the end. So you see the paint peeling like when it's dark, and then she lights the lighter, which I remember that lighter was on eBay, and I was so close to getting it, but I didn't. It was like a prop lighter. They had a light bulb on the side of it.
I almost bought it too, and I didn't. I regret it.
Yeah, the whole scene. I mean, that one camera angle where it's high and then it goes, or it's low and then it goes high and then it goes low again.
Yeah.
Same way with Harry turning that corner and the gray children and the guy that's strung up in the barbed wire. Like, that's straight from the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's great. They did a great job with it, and I love the. It's funny because I feel like it might not be intentional, but she bumps into like a barrel or something.
It made me jump.
It's a cute little jump scare, but it reminds me so much of Harry running face first into walls.
Yes.
And it's just like,
I was like, oh my god, I'm controlling Rose. She's bumping into things.
Knocks into the desk at the school. That was a jump scare.
It's good shit.
Yeah, it's fun.
So what I, at least my opinion, what makes this film feel like Silent Hill to me really is the use of the game soundtracks itself. Like, it feels like a Silent Hill experience because we hear Akira Yamaoka's music from Silent Hill 1 through 4. It plays throughout the film.
Scene, yeah.
The score was re-recorded and remixed for film by Jeff Dana, but it was still when, for example, when Alessa came up through the church floorboards and you heard the opening strains
good.
The God battle music from Silent Hill 3. I was just like, I got chills.
I got chills yesterday. I'm like, it's like that fucking Borean music. Like all these religious people are about to get fucked. It's great.
Wounded War Song when Rose is following the bus route.
The map. I love it. And the track's not coming to me, but when they leave the church and they go to the hospital, it has like tambourines. It's from Silent Hill 4, I think.
Yeah.
There's that shot of them all.
No.
Like,
I think it's from 3.
It's that shot of them all descending the stairs, and for whatever reason, the music is like so perfect for that shot, and I always get this like, this feels cool.
Yeah.
You know what? One of this that I had, I think the most visceral reaction to was when Alessa puts her hand on the plastic where the devil or whatever is, and it plays that one track from Silent Hill 4. That's like,
yeah.
I was like, oh, that's so awesome. Like,
yeah, it's pretty good.
It is pretty damn cool because like that doesn't even happen nowadays, where it's literally just music from the games.
Yeah,
in
nothing
the movie.
has ever done that. Unless you count House of the Dead, which I don't.
And the thing is, they were re-recorded and they added more like of a film soundtrack feel to it. So this is the original Wounded War Song track from Silent Hill 4. And this is Wounded War Song re-recorded for the film.
Yeah, it's Jeff Dana, who also did the score for the second Resident Evil movie.
And for Revelation as well.
Yeah, and wasn't Akira directly involved with it? Like
he was.
Yeah.
So they worked together on it, but it was like
yeah, and it's perfect.
There's good found moments.
Whitney, I think you might have mentioned this earlier, but wasn't Akira a producer on this movie? Am I thinking wrong?
I don't think he was a producer, but he was flown out to like the set and stuff.
Because I remember seeing on Twitter, Roger Avery actually said like the whole Centralia thing was something he presented to Akira, and then like he agreed to it. So I couldn't remember if he had some sort of producer role.
I think he hasn't really been mentioned by name, but I think they were working close to whoever was still at Konami developers at the time. So that would have been Akira. He was a producer role for like later games. So he probably had a big input. And if they put it by him and he said, okay, that was probably like okay, let's go with it.
I seem to remember an interview with him in like Electronic Gaming Magazine or something, where he talks about the movie. And that was like the reason they were interviewing him, was like, you work on the games, what do you think of the movie so far? And he talked about like his experience working with Dana on the music and stuff like that.
Let me
this is a billion years ago.
I think he wasn't a producer on the film. I think he was just he's credited as composer, and I think he's probably consulted heavily.
There was a joint interview with Gans and Yamaoka on the PSP thing, but I don't remember these details.
Okay, I just couldn't remember because I thought that was kind of an interesting like detail. Like they approved, like Akira's the one that approved the Centralia influence. But it's a no. The music is definitely like, even when I watched it last night, I was like, wow, this is really cool that they just put Akira's music in the movie.
It makes it feel like song. I think if they put some other music, it just wouldn't have had that same vibe, because it's like,
why not use it? Yeah.
I love when the theme comes on. It
doesn't play long enough, but it's there.
And then the end credits music I love the end credits for this movie. They feel very PS2 horror game. They feel very Silent Hill, and the fact that it just straight up uses hell's the name of the song from 3?
You're Carol, not here.
I think.
You're not here.
Yeah. It's just like, this is great. This feels perfect.
Yeah, it's just Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. And especially, I remember watching it in the theater, and it was just kind of a surreal moment, because it was just like, that's just from the fucking game.
And it's a vocal track that usually closes a movie, but this time it's appropriate to the actual movie.
Yeah, they didn't.
As opposed to having like a Marilyn Manson song or some rock thing thrown in.
It fades to black and
yeah.
They had a different track for the Japanese release, I believe. I forgot what it was. Yeah. Oh, shoot.
In the Wind?
Hold on. Let me look it up. But
I'm glad they didn't have like an Evanescence song or something. It feels like that would have been like their.
Would have been so cool though, like the fucking Underworld movies.
That was one of the awesome things about Revelation, is that movie ends with Three Voices remix with Rain of Brass Petals, but it also has an original song recorded for that movie, which is Silent Scream, and it's fucking awesome.
So I found it's Loving You is the ending theme for the Japanese release of Silent Hill, sang by Anna Tsuchiya. I never heard of this. I don't know why they changed it. That's weird. But you know what? Gact was used in the end credit sequence for Revelations, so I guess it's not a surprise.
Oh my god.
So I also wanted to point out that the film used a lot of practical effects. In fact, there was over 100 sets made, and the bipedal creatures were people in costumes. I think not depending on green screen and a lot of CG really helped the film age for the most part. CG was prominently used for the fog that like drenches the town, like in the wide shots. They did have a fog machine on set, but like for bigger coverage, it was CG, which you can tell, especially in that one scene where Rose first gets to town and there's like this camera kind of turn when she's looking around. You could see it. The transitions into darkness, as CG, of course, and the insects that surround Pyramid Head. And I think it was an interview with Gans where he mentioned building the sets really helped them achieve some of the iconic camera movements from the game, because they could move the set to allow the camera to like move through it in unique ways. I think one of my favorite shots is when the camera pans over the bathroom wall when the miners are trying to break through. I thought that was a really cool shot.
And when you see how the behind the scenes of how they did that, it's amazing.
Yeah.
They pull the wall away just in time for the camera to get through, and then they connect it back so the miners go up to it, and that's already closed.
That was kind of what I was talking about earlier, when it's like unlike say like the Resident Evil movie, like there's quite a there's some really nice cinematography.
There's some craft.
Movie.
Yeah.
It feels. I mean, not to sound harsh, but it feels like a real movie.
It doesn't feel like a product.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's so interesting with the Resident Evil movies, a comparison. The fourth, Resident Evil Afterlife, recreates the slow-mo Wesker fight from the end of 5. And it's so weird, though, because they're both objectively, like, frame for frame. The first Darkness in the Silent Hill movie and the Wesker fight. But the Wesker fight feels so cheap and shit.
It looks horrible.
It looks so bad, even though it's like they should have the same effect. It should be like, it's 1-to-1 with the game, but it's like it's all wrong. And I think it's the difference between Christophe Gans, who, without trying to sound insulting, makes actual movies, and Paul Anderson, who makes products.
Yeah,
that was probably a budget thing for Resident Evil, but you could still just do that better. I mean, that's like Fisher Price, my first After Effects sequence.
That looks fucking terrible. It looks so. I forgot. All I can think about is the.
I haven't even seen that whole scene. I've just seen clips of it, but I'm like, yikes.
Anyways,
I think Gans mentioned that he's used to working on smaller budgets, because in France, like getting a $15 million budget is like a big deal. So getting the budget he did for Silent Hill, I mean, he still had to cut stuff down, but he had a lot more he could play with and experiment with. So
wasn't it around 35 million for Silent Hill?
I think
or 50, or
I just looked it up. It was 50.
50. Wow. It was a moderate budget, but like October was saying earlier, that was enough to do the movie that they needed to do.
Yeah, like he already kind of knew how to make do with less, and the fact that he had this more money to play with allowed him to really kind of expand his kind of craft with these neat sets and kind of go the extra mile instead of thinking, this is now a shortcut to just use CG and whatnot. He was like, no, we're still going to do practical, but just make more of it and make more use of it. And I think that's why it probably feels less cheap, because CG doesn't age very well, especially from like early 2000s. It's kind of like
especially if you don't have a huge budget. I think something like Lord of the Rings or something holds up because they had tons of money. so that ages well enough. But if you have a low budget and you're using CGI, you probably don't have a ton of time or artists. So it's probably better that they went more with practical.
Practical, just
it's real. It doesn't age.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Jurassic Park. Like, you watch it now and it still like blows your mind. Like, oh, there's real dinosaurs, with some exceptions, but.
Another one I always point to with this is like Attack of the Clones looks so bad now.
Oh, it looks like a PS2 game.
I didn't think it looked super great when it came out. Like, why? Let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
You mentioned the street sign when we were talking about the soundtrack. So obviously the soundtrack made this movie unique from anything else. And the sets as well, the initial alleyway scene, because it's not just that corner. There's those basketball courts with all the chain link fence and the bodies that are strewn everywhere, and that's incredible. But I think another thing that makes the movie really good, or at least notable, is it doesn't just try to adapt a story, but it also tries to emulate some of the gameplay itself, which I've only seen a couple of game movies sort of attempt here and there. And one of them is that sign. You're like, that's how she got to the school. Like, she's using the maps just the way players would use the map in the game.
Well, in the bathroom.
Yeah, and it was a very organic way to do it, as opposed to the Red Queen telling you to go this way. You know, like a very like clumsy, awkward. Well, like, this is sort of how they did it in the game. It feels very natural the way they incorporated that in the movie. And finding the key and getting to the hotel.
You know,
that's what part of stuff you do in the game.
What part of that felt like a very game moment to me was when Rose uses the knife to cut.
I was just about to say, and she immediately loses it.
Like, you could totally see that, like, she went into her inventory and used.
Yeah, like, isn't that Excellent Homecoming or something? Like, it could be.
Yeah, well, she cuts it and then she immediately loses it. So, like, in the game, I can totally see you used the knife, and it's just not in your inventory.
And then you get an achievement, Laurie Strode.
Yeah. So it definitely worked in the movie's favor, using so much practical stuff, and I think that's another reason why the sequel kind of failed, because it looks cheap. Like, there's a lot of CGI, and I keep just flashing back to the fight with Pyramid Head and Cenobite, and they're fighting, and you see, like, his sword bend. I'm like, what? It's rubber. It took me right out of the scene. It was just like, oh, this is bad.
Yeah,
I like the makeup though. The one hallucination that she sees in the mall, where there's that guy, that looks like a practical
face, like zipper face dude.
Yeah, like the Total Recall.
Oh, I thought you meant where the people are like eating like burgers, and I'm like, this scene is so fucking terrible looking and funny. Like, that part makes me laugh so hard.
It feels like she accidentally like stumbled into a Halloween Horror Nights attraction.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of those parts that CJ gets so upset about.
So I guess mentioning the sequel. So Gans did mention this. He said while he was shooting Silent Hill, he kept thinking what a sequel could be like, and so all the more as the ending was an open ending, so he was leaving room for a sequel. The results were such that TriStar soon asked for a sequel less than a year later. I think that Samuel Hidea, who was also co-producing Resident Evil, wanted a Silent Hill sequel less atmospheric than My Silent Hill, with more action. I would tell him, Silent Hill is not and will never be action-packed. It's a nightmare. But Samuel intended to make a Silent Hill franchise, and he wanted to Resident Evilize it. So
how ironic.
So he softly backed off, and he did meet with MJ Bassett on request, and wished them good luck. But yeah, we know how that turned out, and there's rumors now that he might be returning for another Silent Hill movie.
It's more than just rumors. The dude said it, like with his own voice. I just pulled it up here to double check because it has my favorite quote from him where they asked him about Revelation, and his response was, honestly, I never saw it. But yeah, Christophe Gans, director of Brotherhood of the Wolf and the original 2006 Silent Hill movie, commented on his current projects during an interview with French film news site Allociné. Those projects, quote, I have 2 horror film projects with Victor Harida. I am working on the adaptation of the video game Project Zero, known as Fatal Frame in the United States. The film will take place in Japan. I especially don't want to upload blah, blah, blah. We're also working on a new Silent Hill. The project will always be anchored in this atmosphere of a small American town ravaged by Puritanism. I think it's time to make a new one.
Yeah.
So he's involved in some way.
That actually reminds me, he told a story when he was working on, he was trying to get the Crying Freeman movie made, which is has Japanese cast and whatnot. And when he shopped it around to different studios, they were like, people they're not gonna connect with an Asian cast. Can you make them Latino and change it to like Meso or Aztec like religion type stuff? And he's like, no, I'm adapting this Japanese manga. It's gonna stay Japanese. So he stuck to his guns. So I think his Fatal Frame and the Silent Hill movie, apparently, I think they're going to be really good because he doesn't let go of his own vision too much. Like, he's like, I want to make it like this, and that's how it's going to be made. I'm not going to.
Oh my god. I had no idea he made the live action Beauty and the Beast.
Oh my god, yeah.
Wow. That's
I still haven't seen it.
Hey, man, sometimes people got to pay rent.
Yeah, right. Man's got to eat.
Yeah.
But it's...
Just happy to be working.
I didn't know that. Wow, sorry. I don't mean to... That's shocking. Anyways, but yeah,
Wait, which one are you talking about? You're not talking about the Disney one, right?
Yeah.
No, yeah, the live action one with
Emma Watson.
Emma Watson.
No. So that's Bill Condon.
Oh, okay.
He did a French version of Beauty and the Beast that was also a hybrid live action CGI.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It says 2014, so I just assumed. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, all right.
One. Okay, well, that's disappointing.
Yeah, they came out sort of around the same time.
It's
sad for Bill Condon because that's another great director.
I'm looking forward to his Fatal Frame movie. The existing Fatal Frame movie, without trying to sound too harsh, looks like a porn adaptation of Fatal Frame. It's truly awful.
It's funny. A lot of Japanese adaptations, their movies, they always look like cosplay. Like,
I think it just has a miserably low budget.
Yeah, and so this has me. I'm really hoping. Is he basing it off of the first Fatal Frame game?
I don't think we know. I wouldn't
Okay.
be surprised. I would love it if it was 2 because that's my favorite. But I would assume, I think 3 would probably translate the best to a movie because it has more than one location. But I don't think they've actually said.
It's funny because people, fans would complain, like you were saying with the new Resident Evil, the characters having the wrong hairstyle or wearing the wrong thing. Fans would nitpick it, but it's like, these films, they are wearing the exact outfit, but it still doesn't work because it's more than just how a character looks. You have to have good actors, good cinematography on all that stuff. And
a really good... Go ahead, sorry.
No,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
go ahead.
The really good example of this, now this one's, I know this may be opening up a rabbit hole, so let's try not to go too far down it, but it's like the live action adaptation of Cowboy Bebop, where they're not, I get why they can't do one-to-one from the anime, but also the ones that do, like Spike himself, it looks like a cosplay, it looks really bad to me.
It doesn't look like something you'd really wear.
It looks like, yeah, exactly. It's sometimes characters. I mean, it's weird because for all you want to say about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've done a pretty good job of adapting even some of the more ridiculous looking characters into a live action setting pretty
and
well.
Still make that look make sense within the context of that cinematic universe.
Because a big problem, not to go off too much on a tangent, but it's similar, is for a long time superhero movies especially were afraid to lean into and they still are to an extent, but lean into the weirder designs of comic book characters. It's fucking Like, look, I love Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, but he looks like a Power Rangers.
He looks terrible.
He does.
Willem Dafoe's face is scarier.
Exactly. But like,
I love the
of that is they actually had it. I don't know if you guys have seen the animatronic.
Oh
face
yeah,
they originally
the
had.
Deadite face.
Yeah, like just they had it. They just they went a different way as they do a.
It was the same as the X-Men movies where like they all were wearing leather.
That's what I was thinking.
The X-Men movies, that first one, I really like the first movie. The first two are really good in my opinion. Written by Solid Snake, is like the most infuriating line in comic book movie history. Is they're all sitting around in their squeaky, cracking, shitty-looking leather costumes, and Wolverine's like, "You guys go outside in these things." Cyclops goes, "What would you rather, yellow spandex?" It's like, fuck you. Fuck you, movie.
It's one of the. It's a hard thing to do to adapt, is what I'm saying, though.
Just do it, though. That's my thing. It's like you've spent all this money to acquire this license, but the costumes, that's where you're drawing the line. The thing that people that define these characters visually, but your movie's too good for that. That infuriates me.
But that's one of those things, though, that I think it's kind of a case-by-case basis. Like
it is, but then you see Japanese adaptations, and I can't speak for the horror stuff. I don't necessarily see that so much as cosplay, just more maybe theatrical, almost like in a theater kind of way. But some of their live action adaptations of some of the more fantastic characters, I don't know how they do it, but they're always able to get it right. As far as I'm concerned, they can do these wacky, over-the-top designs, and somehow it still comes across. Like, I don't know, if you're gonna make a Wolverine movie, have him wear yellow. Like, just bite the bullet. And I think now we're getting to a point where, like if there's a new Wolverine reboot or something like that, then they can lean into that a little more. But that always baffles me. It's like, and I think that's more of a. You did open up a tangent. I'm gonna have to finish this thought now. But the having a Wolverine movie where he's in the yellow suit, it's like if you've gotten that property and that's what people recognize, I think changing that, I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought, but I think the point is do it. If you have it, do it. And here's my point. Sorry, you can edit around this, Whitney. I'm sorry, but people are patterned to think, oh, well, it's a case-by-case thing. If they did all the X-Men with Storm and her silver thing, you know what? I think it's because we see movies and we see those safe options. I think it's nice when we get something like a Deadpool where you're like, yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, it's sort of, it's they've designed it slightly different. Or Colossus, like, yeah, just do that. And I think it's because we're so used to, those safe design choices that we're like, well, I don't know if a yellow Wolverine or Captain America with the wings, it's like it was good enough for the comics, but not for the movies. I don't know. I think there's a way around some of those.
I think
some of those design choices.
Sometimes it comes down to, can the actor actually move in the costume? Like if there's, like, for example, Pyramid Head in this movie, they originally tried to do the Silent Hill 2 look.
Practical reasons.
Really?
Yeah, and I guess the guy was having trouble walking because the helmet, the way it was designed, it wasn't working. He kept like tripping or whatever. And so they made that more streamlined version of the helmet so the actor could move, essentially.
I like to imagine Pyramid Head just like trying to like terrifyingly shamble after you, and he trips. He's like, "Hold on, give me 1 minute. Come on, hold on."
Into the wall.
And I'm not sure if maybe it was like a time issue, because you see cosplay of fans who've made the Silent Hill 2 Pyramid Head, and they're able to move around just fine. But I'm wondering if, like, because
also fans are just wandering around a convention hall and not performing.
That's true. So it comes down to the performance. If the costume's going to hinder the performance, I'd rather that they retool it so it has some recognizable elements, but then the actor can still, it looks like Pyramid Head. It's not the Pyramid Head we know, but you could still tell it's supposed to be him. I
still did the Leonardo DiCaprio point thing. I still did it. There's my boy. There he is. But
maybe like the spandex or yellow spandex, maybe they tried it and it just didn't look very good on film.
No,
That's
it
true.
was.
I mean, that's fair. I'm sure we only see the final product, right? We don't see all the iterations, like especially in games. Like, do you really think your idea was better? Because we tried that and it just didn't work. Like, we tried it.
Not to keep the tangent going. From what I recall, it was a studio decision to not have the costumes. It was a big thing with comic book movies, and it's why Spider-Man looked so weird in the first one as well. It was Spider-Man with the big puffy webbing was Sam Raimi fought the studio tooth and nail to have Spider-Man look like Spider-Man in that movie. The original design, the costume was like mostly black and was also leather, and it had like big plastic bits on his shoulders and shit.
Ew.
So it's always a fight with a studio. And the famous
in the early days of superhero movies where they were just trying to get like out the door. So and playing it safe, that's a financial decision when you're making $100 million movie. So I get it. I just think creatively, it's like do it or not do it. Like no one wants to see a movie where all the X-Men are the fucking same costume color.
Counterpoint, maybe I shouldn't, but like the Cowboy Bebop thing I was just going on about. The one actress is getting huge amounts of shit because she's not wearing like nothing like one of the characters.
Yeah, she's
like,
Faye. She's not wearing the yellow.
She's not wearing the yellow spandex where like her titties are hanging out constantly.
And her butt cheeks too.
My last point on this is I think there is instances where things will not work in a live action setting. Not
Absolutely.
all of them. That's why I'm saying it's a case by case. It's not that I think that Wolverine shouldn't be in the yellow spandex. I'm just saying that there are some designs that just do not work in real life.
Yeah, if like you do a kick or something, it's like, oh well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like you have to adapt things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and you know what? I still like Buff Pyramid Head. Maybe I prefer the little lanky, creepy one more, but I still like Buff Pyramid Head. Why not?
You get to see his butt.
Yeah, exactly. That was when they ported him to when they put him in Dead by Daylight, they upgraded his butt even more.
Yeah,
it's still flat underneath.
They buffed it up a little bit. The posterior is no longer inferior, but it's not quite as good as it was during the demo.
So, I guess since we're talking about costumes, I did want to point out, I thought it was really cool how subtly Rose's costume changed throughout the film. Like, it's so subtle, but like she starts off with like a brown cardigan, gray skirt and all that, and then as the movie goes, it goes to gray, to blue, to red, to like completely drenched in blood and all red. It's like, wait, when did she change her clothes? She didn't. I thought it was cool how her costume kind of did a transition as well, just like Silent Hill. So she had like hundreds of her outfit in like various shades, and just the planning you have to do to pull that off enough where it's not jarring. Because I know when I first watched it, I was like, wait, well, her outfit wasn't red. Watching it back, you're like, oh, and now it's gray, and now it's blue. Like, if you know to look out for it, you can tell, but when you're watching, it's so, like, seamless. It's really cool, and she even, I think the actress said that she didn't wash her hair either. So as filming went on, it seemed like she was really there in that grody place. Her hair was getting all gross, too. I think
she did a fantastic job. I think she's one of the strengths of that movie.
She is, yeah.
For all its feelings, I think the lead actress, Radha Mitchell, I think she turns in a great performance.
Yeah,
it's funny because we were just talking about costumes and like things that work in real life, but like Sybil is just Sybil from the game. Like it's the exact same costume.
Yeah, she's a motorcycle cop. She has the leather pants, which makes sense.
And Dahlia for the most part.
And she has
the spelled Bram's wrong.
Yeah, the spelled Bram's wrong.
She's a good cop.
I am sad though. I mean, it's cool that Dahlia still runs around kind of barefoot. Well, she does run around barefoot. I just wish they gave her tie and stuff, just so we go, oh, it's her.
They really did just split Dahlia from the game into two characters in the movie, though. Christabel is just like kind of like the bad parts of game Dahlia.
I was super disappointed with it. I think because that was one of the more what the fuck things when I came out of the theater. I'm like, why did they make
it's a
her
weird choice?
A good
It's
guy.
a weird. It seems to be an easier choice to have her be one.
Yeah.
Like, you save a lot of time. You save a lot of exposition. It's like, no, it's her mother. Like, maybe it was too simple. I don't know. And they needed like a villain, like a bad guy who wasn't related to Alessa.
But
I don't
she
know.
is. That's her aunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I forgot that.
Yeah, they said that's her sister, right?
Yeah, that's her sister, and also Claudia is related too. So we have like a little cousin kissing action happening in the second film too.
I really think Alice Krieg Christabella just should have been Dahlia. Like, they'd get Dahlia from the games. That's what I think. Because I think she does do a pretty. I think, even though I'm not a huge fan of the character, I do think that she puts on a pretty good performance. Like, she's a scary lady, and she very much plays up the like fanatical preacher thing in a way that like that. It's really easy to dip into like obnoxious with that kind of character, but she just straddles the line perfectly, where it's like you're an evil person, but you're not like over the top. But
she doesn't come across as like crazy, just fanatical.
Have you guys seen Midnight Mass?
Yep.
Not yet.
No, it's awesome.
Well, one of the characters in there, it was kind of a similar.
I was thinking of Mrs. Carmody from The Mist, the religious fanatic who riles everybody up in the grocery store.
I think I was disappointed because I couldn't understand, well, at least at the time, I couldn't understand why they couldn't just keep the same. Yes, the mom burned her child alive for selfish reasons to bring forth her religion's God. And years later, kind of taking a step back, I'm like, okay, I guess it kind of makes sense. The general public will be, what the fuck? Burning witches for like religious reasons, it clicks with people more because we have that kind of
it's easier to understand.
To the past, we know that people have done this in the past. Not necessarily burning your child alive in hopes that a god fetus will be put in her to birth a god.
That is kind of out of left field,
It's imagine trying to explain to a normal person a glophodus. They'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
I have to explain why Claudia ate a fetus in Silent Hill 3. I think a glophodus is a little bit easier to.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. At the same time, though, I mean that's the challenge of adapting a story like Silent Hill. It's like try explaining any of it to the lay person. You know,
Whitney. Sorry if I'm bringing up a bad memory, but wasn't there a thing like you went to a panel for the second movie and someone asked about like the fetus or something?
No, that was CJ. I couldn't get.
Oh, it was CJ.
I couldn't get into the panel at Comic-Con. But CJ was able to get to the New York one, and someone asked about the fetus.
Someone asked about the fetus eating, and it's just like, oh, please stop. Please stop. Like, what
did they say?
I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Are you going to have the fetus in the movie or something, or do you know what this is?
Like, they literally like went into some like really like awful lore spiel about like
some super fanboy,
and then they were like basically trying to ask like, do you eat a fetus in this movie? And and it was, I don't know, you'd have to ask CJ, but for some reason you don't. Sorry if I'm switching gears here, but like, you know who actually does a really good job in this movie? Another really good performance is Jodelle Ferlin.
Yeah,
really good.
Yeah. She's a great actress in general. She was in this movie, I think it's called Tigerland, or maybe I'm getting that wrong. But there's a Terry Gilliam, Tideland, yeah. A Terry Gilliam movie, and she's around the same age. I think it's the same year, and she's great in that too.
Actually, mentioning her, Gans had mentioned that he was worried about casting a child actress. Like that would be the hardest thing to find, and she was the first person he casted, and he was so pleased with her performance that she could take on those 3 different roles and do okay with it. You know, I mean, there's still
I especially loved her as the demon. I think she really shines in those scenes. Like she really feels like an adult, like demon or whatever you want to call it, inside a child, like performing through a child's body.
Yeah. She feels like something.
If you guys have watched American Horror Story recently, there's a child character named Alma, and she did such a good job. Like I hated her, and it was like this child, but she did a really good job in the show. Yeah, I agree.
she can actually one of the few moments in the movie that actually kind of freaks me out is she's like, look at me, I'm burning, and then she just lights on fire.
Where's my Sharon?
Look at me. I'm burning.
Her performance is actually like legitimately like, yeah, she did a really good job, especially considering she was what, like 10?
I think it's
years
something like that. And we mentioned it earlier, but when she's skipping through the blood after Christabella gets cut in half, like, to me, that's one of the most chilling shots in it because of the context. It's like this child, but it's also a demon, and this is all kind of because of her, and she's just like, it's just a game. Like, she's loving it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it gets pretty dark.
She had really good micro expressions too, like you see in a lot of older actors. There are some hammy moments, like the beginning when she's screaming Silent Hill.
Especially early on.
We're going home.
Rose!
Wake up!
Hey!
I was like,
yeah, that part's like, yeah, can you not?
But you know what?
I can equate that to the same kind of weird voice acting in the first game. It's like, this can kind of play as that awkward dreamlike dialogue too, though. So,
but it makes me laugh, and it's not supposed to be a scene that makes you laugh. So there are some like scenes, but I think that comes down again to the direction she was receiving. I think she could have. I'm sure there was probably some other takes where it wasn't as cheesy.
But I think it would have been better if she whispered or something. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. When she's screaming it feels like it's supposed to be like Christophe Gans is holding up a giant sign, like, "See, you idiots! That's why this movie is called that." Like,
oh God.
And that was a reshoot, wasn't it, Whitney? Where they had to establish.
So. I think so.
That opening, because I think there was some confusion about her connection to the town, so they went back and
I think so. I think that was a
they
reshoot.
filmed the scene with Rose trying to get her on the cliff.
So, I definitely think her acting as the film progressed definitely was wow. I can't believe how old she was. How old was she at the time? I gotta look this up.
I looked it up. So she's 27 now, which is crazy. In the movie, so let's see. Let's do some.
So it was filmed in like 2005.
5 or something.
Yeah.
So
she was born in 94.
So she would have been. No, that was 16 years ago. So I feel like really
she was also the zombie girl in Cabin in the Woods from that hillbilly family.
And
remember that.
This is interesting. I did not know this. She is the voice of the little sisters in BioShock 2.
Huh. She would have been. I did the math. She would have been 11 years old.
Yeah, that's pretty good acting for an 11-year-old.
Yes.
Oh yeah, especially especially several different characters. Yeah, it's usually the Sharon character that I feel like has the like moments where like I remember at one point she's like, I don't remember, and I'm like, that's the best take you had.
Honey, sometimes when you go to sleep, you go on a little walk. And sometimes you talk about a place called Silent Hill.
I don't remember.
Oh, that's okay, sweetie. That's why we're gonna go there. So you can remember.
It's kind of like a stereotypical actor, child actor type of thing. It's like, okay.
Child actor has the most difficult time playing it to her actual age.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Play naive child. I don't know how to do that.
And then when she plays a fucking demon, she's like perfect.
Again, it could just be Gans be like, no, you have to sound.
Definitely.
You have to sound more innocent. And she's like, oh, okay. Let me sound like I'm 4 years old.
A high C commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that whole scene where I think that's like one of my least favorite scenes in the movie. Actually, is when Rose and her are sitting beneath the tree, and she's like, "Honey, don't you know that there are points when you talk about a place called Silent Hill?" And I'm like, "Oh God, this." I don't remember. And then you get the worst part about it.
Noises.
This is an amazing lion. Did you do that all by yourself? Mm-hmm. I'm so impressed with you, honey.
Meow, 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 meow.
Hey, you know we're going on a special trip, don't you?
she picks up the fucking cell phone from like 2003, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is an old movie. I forgot.
Yep.
Silent Hill, the one place that can fuck up a Nokia.
Right?
I did think it was pretty funny that her phone was making the static.
Static.
But it was a cute way of doing that, as opposed to her finding some weird old radio. Just her phone's the one doing the static. It's easy to figure out, and she brought it with her.
She should have. Yeah, it makes a lot more sense just because, like, who in their right mind would be like, oh, I'm gonna take this fucking radio from 19.
Radio? What's that radio?
And then James is like, it's broken.
You know, originally, she was supposed to wake up after the attack from the raid children. She was supposed to wake up in the diner.
Oh, really?
I would have been so thrilled if it was that, not the bowling alley. Because it was another reference to Silent Hill 1. And then maybe we could have had a radio. What's up with that radio?
Yeah. Yeah, that it's interesting because one of the few moments where we were talking about the score earlier, but that's the moment where the Johnny Cash song is playing on the jukebox when she wakes up. And it's like the Ring of Fire song. That's like one
I remember Roger Ebert's review, his famous review. He talked about The Craft and how he's like, I don't know what I saw. I'm not sure if it was a movie, but I've never seen a movie use the Johnny Cash song "Ring of Fire" more appropriately than this movie.
It's that song. It's a good song. I love Johnny Cash. I hate it because there's all these like fan soundtracks on YouTube, and all of them include that for some goddamn reason. It's like, I'm not here for this. It is in the movie, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Go away.
Yeah, it's
it was a weird needle drop to include. Like, okay,
I get it. It's just when I'm chilling out and I'm working at like 2 a.m. and I'm listening to good Akira Yamaoka vibes, and then all of a sudden that fucking it's like,
that reminds me of like when you used to like. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but like pirating like the Silent Hill 4 soundtrack, and you get that like weird like track of, like the Japanese guy
yelling at you.
Yeah, that used to scare the shit out of me. Because it would just be like you said, 2 a.m, and then suddenly this guy's fucking screaming at me in Japanese, like, what's happening?
I remember I tried to go to sleep one time listening to the original Silent Hill 1 soundtrack, and I was okay up to a certain point, and then I got woken up. Because that's not really a soundtrack you can go to sleep to.
All the thrashing, clanging, and noises didn't lull you to sleep.
The track that's just a fucking medical drill.
Okay, I'm gonna check checking YouTube Silent Hill ASMR.
It exists.
It's just Silent Hill 2 stuff. That's it.
Okay, I was hoping it's like the ambient tracks that Akira makes. That's like
industrial ASMR.
Yeah.
So there's some like other like really cool nods to the game. I thought it was really cool that they actually used a real town that was going to be demolished, and they
really?
Yeah,
in Canada.
They put on like some fake facades, but I mean a lot of it was unchanged. It was like an old town, and it was about to be demolished to be rebuilt. And I liked how they went in and they put in signs that you would see in the town of Silent Hill. I mean, that sort of care, like stuff you wouldn't even really notice unless you were looking for it. I think
Nathan Drugs and such, yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to the passion that Gans had for Silent Hill. You could feel that he was a fan. I think that the film overall, it had some missteps. Like, I still think it's dumb that he changed Harry to a woman for stupid reasons, and
the reason is dumb. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still appreciate it, even how flawed it is. I still appreciate it got made, because one of the greatest things it's ever done is introduced Silent Hill to the mainstream, and it brought in a load of new fans who saw the movie and then became so interested in this world, and it got them to play Silent Hill 1, 2, 3, 4, and I remember seeing new forum threads of new fans or who just saw the movie, and I'm like, this is wonderful. You know, I might have my issues with the movie, but it is spreading the fandom, and I'll always credit the movie for doing that.
Yeah, the thing I love in that regard is it's the one and only video game movie my parents have ever seen where they came out of it and went, that was actually pretty good. Like my dad especially is like legitimately anti-video game, and like every game movie he's ever seen, he walked out of the Ace Attorney movie. He thinks rightfully so, that the Resident Evil movies are stupid. But Silent Hill, he was like, yeah, that was really good. It reminded me of like a French impressionist horror movie from like the 70s or something. Like,
it was the atmosphere. And that's really what sold it.
And it took its time. Like it didn't try to get to all these like big moments in the games. It took its time, getting there and establishing the atmosphere and teasing stuff out.
Like it legitimately like especially compared to the video game movies of the time, like there's a sincere effort to it. Like regardless, like I have to admit, like I don't love the movie. I don't even know if I would say I think it's good in air quotes, but like for example, I had the same reaction the past few times I've watched it. I've probably seen it like upwards of 10 times now, so I guess I must like it on some level, but I always am really enjoying it until it gets to the witch burning stuff. Those scenes for some reason just grate on me. Like specifically where like Sybil, like it gets burned alive and like, Christopher was like, burn her as a witch. And I'm just like, okay, can we stop?
That's relatively late in the movie though, right?
Yeah.
I know, but when it gets more and more into that kind of stuff, it really starts to fall apart for me. But again, the whole movie feels, for lack of a better term or lack of a better way of putting it, it just feels like a movie. Like it doesn't feel like a product. It doesn't feel like it's not like something like, oh, we took a popular IP and we wanted to try and make some money off it. Like again, you could tell Christophe Gans legitimately liked Silent Hill. Whether everything worked out or not, that's going to depend on who's watching.
He tried.
He tried and
he cared about it.
Yeah, and exactly. And again, there's craftsmanship to it. Like, we were talking about the door scene, like there's this legitimately amazing cinematography in that movie. So like, I do think overall it's worth, like, it's important. And you know what? This is going to sound funny, but like Whitney, you mentioned new fans being brought on.
Yeah.
You know who has only experienced Silent Hill and is a big name? Hideo Kojima. He's only watched the movie and he likes it a lot. Which is really funny considering he worked at Konami, but yeah,
I'm surprised. I thought he played the games.
Oh, nope.
Wow.
Nope. He's only watched the movie, and he likes it a lot.
Yeah.
But
first time I saw it on opening night, and I had to go to the next town over, not Brams, but a town called Greenville, and it was this super rainstorm, and we got right up to the end, and people were like laughing, and it was not a great opening night crowd. But we get to the very end, and Rose is going into the house, and the power goes out. Like, it's literally like 30 seconds to the end credits.
No.
All she needs to do is like walk in, and the demon Sharon walks away, and then they pan out, and then it cuts to that song. But like, I was just like, what else could go wrong, right? And then the power finally comes back on, like maybe a couple minutes later. We get that 30 seconds. I didn't know what I had just seen, because I think just like you, Whitney, I had all my expectations. I had seen the trailers, and I had all these ideas of what I wanted to see, and based on what Christophe Gans had said his intentions were, and the budget and all that. So I went in with all these expectations, and I'm trying to digest the movie as I'm watching it, which is a very different experience than seeing it for a second time and being able to go, okay, I know where they're going with this. I know why this is here. It wasn't until the second viewing, which I was lucky enough to screen, just me and my friend at a theater that I used to work at, just us two, at like 11:30 at night or something once the theater closed. And it wasn't until that second viewing that I was like, in that moment, I was like, yeah, this is good. It's even kind of great. And one of the scenes that always got me, it's arguably my favorite scene in the movie, is when Rose gets back to the church at the end, and everybody's punching her and spitting on her, and she has that big emotional speech. I remember it must have been, maybe it was the first time I saw it, or it was definitely the second time. Like, that brought me to tears. Like, it was like so emotional. She has like 3 or 4 lines where she's just screaming, you know, like, you know, you've what is it? You've created this hell, and you know, you're the ones that are damned. I'm butchering it, but I remember after that,
your faith has like led you astray, type of.
Yeah, and you're already damned. You can't go to hell because you're already damned. Something like that.
And now you cower in the face of Alessa's revenge.
Heresy. Burn her! Burn her!
Your faith brings death!
You are alone in this limbo, and God is not here.
But I remember after every subsequent viewing of that, I would work myself up to that state because it was such this release after all the stuff that had come before that. And I think that's special for a movie that's like based on a horror video game, you know, to actually like emotionally move you or get you invested enough in the story and the characters to get you to that stage. And I think that's one of the cool things that movie did. Again, with all its failings, it still moves you. Yeah, it's still emotional.
It did its job. I mean, if you felt something watching it, I mean, if it's when you don't get a reaction, I think it's something like a film, a game will fail. If it's just like a
100%.
Either you hate it or you love it. Like
right, mediocre is the worst thing you can be.
Indifference is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think kind of like with Silent Hill 4, I mean, that was a black sheep at the time. A lot of fans did not like that game when it came out, trashed it every chance they could get. And then all of a sudden, new games came out, and all of a sudden, this game is seen in a whole new light. I think the Silent Hill
Team
film...
Silent worked on 4 too. That was the last good one.
I think the Silent Hill film had like a kind of a renaissance in terms of like fans viewing it nowadays. They're like, oh, you know, this actually was pretty good for the time, especially when this is what we get now with Revelation. I think a lot of people are looking back more fondly at it. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't have its faults. There are some pacing issues. There's the big info dump that I hate at the very end. But I think it works.
And for the most part, time has been kind to the first movie.
Yeah, it has room. You have room to breathe between scenes. It's not actions like with Revelation. It's just like moving one set to another set, and there's no like time for. There's like a grand speech, but there's like no time to like internalize what's being said or what's been done.
To digest it.
Yeah, this movie you at least have that sort of breathing room, and they do try to. It's a dumb video game, but I feel like they're trying to elevate it somewhat. You know, it wasn't trying to dumb things down from the audience. They still kept some mystery to the story. They tried to keep similar themes of the game.
Yeah.
I guess did justice in that aspect, even if it wasn't a direct adaptation.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Like, maybe now is the time for us to have the Silent Hill 1 direct adaptation. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We're gonna,
I was thinking at the time, like, because, you know, any adaptation or any new technology or anything like that, like, you have that one that kind of breaks the ground. Like, we got a Silent Hill movie. It's not perfect, but there's a lot of good things in it, and it laid the groundwork. And then you can, and not that Christophe Gans is like an amateur either, but then you have someone who understands the game and has the benefit of hindsight from how the first one was made, and then you can make that definitive one. I remember at the time I was like, it would probably be completely different and maybe even suck, but like, what if like David Lynch just straight up did like a Silent Hill movie? The irony, of course, it would not be anything like the games, but
no, they would.
I always had that dream though. Like, what would that look like?
Yeah,
my dream would be, because he is actually legitimately a fan of the games, is Guillermo del Toro.
Yes.
Yeah.
He actually like legitimately loves Silent Hill too. Like, imagine a Guillermo del Toro. Fucking, I mean, I guess he was going to work on a Silent Hill. Holy fuck.
Yeah, imagine. It's all we can do.
No, we want it to come out, though. If he's attached to it, it's not going to come out.
I never understood why they didn't just adapt the second game. It has such a simpler story.
That would be way harder, though, I think. And that would... I don't know. Like maybe the fan reaction to that would be even worse in terms of
story-wise,
James isn't wearing a green jacket in this one.
It's easier to digest like what's going on. I think for a general audience perspective,
but it's so sacred to the fans. I think that's a double-edged sword either way.
Honestly, the fan base is tiny compared to what they could be. Like he's a fucking Oscar-winning director. Like he can make whatever he wants. Like just imagine like. I agree with Whitney. Like Silent Hill, the great thing about Silent Hill 2 compared to the first one is you do not need to know a single fucking lick about the first one or why the town is fucked up to enjoy that story.
Or even the second game.
Yeah, that's what I mean though. You don't need to. That's the thing about I always say about subsequent Silent Hill media is that all you need to know truthfully is that the Silent Hill is a fucked up place. That's all you need to know. It's some fucked up ghost town of some sort. You don't need to know that there was a cult and a lesson. You don't need to know that. You don't need to.
I mean, and that's still stuff that you can get from like going to different areas in the film.
Yeah, or even just hint at it without even going into the specifics.
Yeah,
I mean that's one of the things that like. And we've talked about the other games at length, and I personally think they're mostly fine regardless. But that's one of the things I think, talking about Silent Hill 4 and Silent Hill 4 and the movie and all these different things are a really great explanation of Silent Hill. Silent Hill isn't a place. Silent Hill is a feeling. Silent Hill is an atmosphere and a sound, and that's what the movie got. And that's what Silent Hill 4 still had. Silent Hill 4 has about 30 seconds that actually takes place in the town of Silent Hill. And it's still Silent Hill, and that's what matters.
It's like how the town, like with the exception of 2 and 3 and I guess Origins, like how the town looks so fucking different like each time we go to it. Like that's like a video game. Like I know it's like different parts of the lake. I know that.
It's different parts, but it's also the town still exists. It's just when they go there,
it like reconfigures, like,
but it doesn't. But it's like what October is saying is like it's the feeling that matters ultimately.
It's a nightmare. You don't need your nightmares explained, right?
Yeah, I mean the more you explain it, the less scary it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't need to have like a scene where like in Guillermo del Toro's Silent Hill 2 and where it says where they use the Dune movie opening where he's like and Alessa was burned and blah 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 and I'm like, no, this doesn't matter at all to us.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be what I would hope is that because I would still like to see as much as I appreciate this movie, I still would like to see like almost what they're doing with Resident Evil now, like that 1-to-1 adaptation.
Yeah, I still long for that myself. I don't think it's going to happen, but
I mean, we'll see how this new Resident Evil does in the box office. As much as I want it to succeed, I have a really strong suspicion it's going to fail miserably.
Well, especially since advertising it.
Especially since it's only in theaters.
It's only in theaters. COVID, they've barely advertised it, and I know fans hate hearing this. The fact that Alice isn't in it is a massive knock against it for casual audiences.
For marketing, it totally is.
I have a strong suspicion this movie is going to crash and burn him.
I plan on seeing it. I think it looks good.
I'm going to wait until it's available digitally, and then I'll see it.
Yeah, I'll see it at midnight because I live in the middle of fucking nowhere, and our theater's always dead.
They just need to put it out on Netflix, and then people will flock to it because they have nothing else to watch.
That's literally the only reason I won't see it. Is like, I won't go to any movie right now, but that's a whole nother thing.
Although, actually, it would be a funny parallel because I remember that was the big thing with the first movie is it did just okay in the box office, but it got all the sequels because it came out at like the exact right moment as DVDs were starting to kick off, and it made a shit zillion dollars on DVD.
Yeah, a lot of movies don't do well in theaters, and then they end up doing really well on home video or whatever.
Speaking of which, that new Ridley Scott movie apparently only made $4 million in the box office opening weekend.
Which is a shame because I saw it and it was pretty good.
I'm sure it's great. Just holy fuck.
That's pretty
bad. But I mean, that's another one of those like pandemic or it just came out at the wrong time. Like, yeah, I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Why certain movies flop and Halloween beat James Bond, you know?
But yeah, it's a... Yeah. Oh gosh, now I want Guillermo del Toro Silent Hill movie. Fuck.
Imagine it.
That'd be
I think
so
like
good.
with the tone of something like The Shape of Water, yeah, I think he could. He just
Or
needs
like-
to like trim down some of his style because I remember what is it, Crimson Peak? I don't know why, but that movie it just didn't click for me. And sometimes he goes a little too far into that genre, and sometimes he can rein himself in, like with The Shape of Water.
I thought Crimson Peak was good. I just thought it was mismarketed. They were trying to sell it as like this scary ghost thing.
Yeah, it was more like a.
It was like a love story, and there just happened to be like the character says in the film. It just there happens to be a ghost in it, and
yeah. So yeah, it's. I even remember like us way back in the day on like whispers about like imagine what they do like nowadays with like a Detective Pikachu where it's like it's a Silent Hill movie that's in the game's universe but it's its own story. Like that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. But wasn't Detective Pikachu based on a Detective Pikachu game?
Yeah, loosely.
It's loosely based on it and hilariously answers the question of what happened to that character's dad, which the game does not, because the game was designed with a sequel in mind that it will never, ever, ever get.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. And
was his dad supposed to be Pikachu?
It's pretty obvious when you play the game, and the movie makes it clear. So yeah.
Okay. I never played the game, so I didn't know going in.
I didn't find out about it until afterwards. I was like, wow, that's a really cool marketing idea for a movie.
The big difference is in the game, Pikachu tries to summon a demon god by impregnating.
Just out of curiosity, and so our listeners won't be confused.
I was like, wait, what?
Why won't the game ever get a sequel, October?
I don't think it did very well.
No, it didn't. It was just it did.
It came out at it's one of those like Luigi's Mansion situations where everyone's like, yeah, fuck yeah, Pokemon on 3DS, this is gonna be amazing, and then it was that, and everyone's like, I don't want that.
No, I just figured they could pump out anything with Pikachu or Pokemon on, and people would get it.
Well, yes, but actually no. As long as it's a real Pokemon game, yes, it can literally be terrible and people will still buy it. But if it's a weird thing like Detective Pikachu and it's like a weird text adventure game, people are going to be like, nah.
Oh, it's a text adventure game?
It's like a mystery game. It doesn't play anything like Pokemon. It's more like the investigation segments in Phoenix Wright.
Or you like point and click on things type of thing?
Yeah, kind of. I think you can actually walk around, but yeah, it's not a Pokemon game. It just happens to have Pokemon in it.
Well, I mean, this is going pretty long. Do you guys have any final thoughts about the movie you'd like to talk a little bit more about, or you want to close things up?
Sure. I think my final thought is, it's a interesting piece of like that meld or interesting piece of history of like the whole like trying to bring it full circle here a little, that whole like video games as art thing, because like for a long time and I don't know if that's really the consensus anymore because it's been a long time, and there have been things like Sonic the Hedgehog that are these really huge budget video game adaptations. But for a long time, Silent Hill was the like, hey, this is how you do a video game movie. And like Whitney said, for all its flaws, I think it was worthwhile. It's overall, I think it's a good movie. I appreciate the craft of it. I don't love everything about it, as I already said, but it was worth it. That's basically how I feel about it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad it was made, with all my nitpicks about it and like disappointments. Years later, I've come to appreciate it a lot more, especially knowing how a Silent Hill film could go. It could go into like really campy. It's still wildly entertaining to me, but it's not what you want to see in this sort of video game adaptation. I found a lot more to love about it over the years, so I look more fondly on it than I did when I first saw it. I think I was a little too harsh on it, and I think it's because I let my own expectations kind of get away from me. I knew going in that there was different characters, but I just saw so many like little bits from the original game. I'm like, well, maybe it still will be, just with Rose instead of Harry. It will still be the game. it wasn't the game, and that really bummed me out. But over the years, I've found new things to really, really enjoy in my rewatches with the music, the sets, just the cinematography, and just the fact it brought in so many fans to the series, and I'm always grateful for that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think a lot of people's disappointment came from the fact that it was not the movie they wanted to be made. Rather, it's like their expectations did not jive with what actually came out, and then they were disappointed in that rather than like viewing it on its own merits. But yeah, I think it aged well.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's a solid 7 out of 10.
Oh, a typical Silent Hill score.
But and it took a second viewing for me to really appreciate it, because when I first saw it, I didn't know what I had seen. I was, like I said, trying to digest it as I was watching it, picking up things from the games, but it not being quite the same. But I ended up seeing it in the theater probably 4 times, maybe.
I think I saw it twice.
I've since seen it on video a couple more times. I have the French HD DVD. I have the French Super Blu-ray, and I got the Shout Factory version of it. And I admit I haven't watched it a ton since it came out. But yeah, I think it did its job. I think it gave fans representation in movie form, which is kind of similar to the Resident Evil Silent Hill game version. Resident Evil got it first, and Silent Hill came out afterwards. And the first movie did attempt to do a version of that psychological atmospheric horror in the town that we all love so much. And I think it did more right than it did wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
October? Yeah.
I mean, I'd agree with that. I think that if there was going to be a Silent Hill movie, then if this had been our one shot at it, yeah, I'm more than happy with it. It did what I think any big Hollywood production could have hoped to do with it, and I'm happy with it. I don't really have many problems with it at all, especially following Revelation. It's like I would put it up there with the Ace Attorney movie and Mortal Kombat. It's like, these are the good video game movies.
Wait, which Mortal Kombat?
The original.
I loved the theme song. I was so mad that they did a remix of it. I'm like, no, I want the original. Mortal Kombat.
I like that they kind of quoted it throughout the movie, but that new movie's junk.
It just wasn't the same. I was like,
yeah.
I was waiting for that track, like that needle drop to happen, and then the credits happened, and it was kind of there, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Well, one last thing, Whitney. I remember at the very beginning of the podcast, you said that why didn't Sybil go in the elevator, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could debate, but I always got the impression she was there to stop them from going after her.
Yeah, but there was
to hold them off.
There was that bar, right? And she was stopping them. They were backing off with her billy club. She could have squeezed in there and pulled the bar down, and the doors would have closed still. But the thing that infuriates me is the fact that she just lets them,
yeah,
she just lets them beat her up. She was kicking ass. And once those elevators closed, and then she brought out her gun, she didn't have a bullet. Okay, fine. She still had her billy club, and then she just stood there while they surrounded her and then beat the shit out of her. I'm like, come on, Sybil.
Yeah.
You were doing so well. Why?
We should, if we ever interview that actress, we should ask her. Was that like a director thing? Like, was that a writer thing?
I think
she does the Ellen Ripley Alien 3 fall into the fire thing. Like, she's a noble sacrifice. Like, no, come on.
And it wasn't needed.
Just without any reason, because she wasn't really that injured.
She
could have just fought, and they could have still beat her because there's 3
or just
people.
Beat her to death. Why does she have to be burned? It was so. Ugh.
Yeah.
Like, was she just going to be used to give Rose more time to get to the church before her daughter was burned? I guess. But it's like, I would have rather her death happened that moment when the elevator closed and we saw her getting beat up, because it looked like she was beaten to death. And then we see her tied to a ladder to be burned. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm just imagining the cult's thought process of just kind of like, shit, she's still alive. What should we do? We should burn her. Oh, you think she's a witch? No, just burn her.
No, we just don't like her.
I mean, that's basically it. Like, yeah.
It was just one of the things that infuriated me when watching it. It's like, why did she give up? Why? She's like this tough cop. It's, whatever.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
It would have been so much. It would have been so easy to just have them like get the better of her in that fight with her going down fighting.
Yeah.
It's a very
You could probably just do that in editing with what they had too.
Yeah, exactly. Like they didn't need to have her like have this really awkward burning scene.
I mean, they had the with the elevator falling, and then they interspersed her getting the shit kicked out of her. That was good enough. I mean, I thought she was dead at that moment, and then
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, poor Sybil. Sybil deserved better.
She did deserve better. I mean, I understand that. I guess they wanted to kill her off because the game, most people got the bad.
I mean, I think that the main reason they wanted to kill her off is otherwise only like 2 people die in this horror movie, and you know, other than just generating another character to kill, like the teen girl in the second movie who appears solely to die.
Suki?
That was weird.
Is that her name, Suki?
I don't remember.
Oh.
It's like, is that a producer's daughter? Why is she in this?
Or like Douglas, who just gets murked like right away. Oh gosh! Oh, Revelation was going to be fun.
We'll get to
we
it.
should save that for the Revelation discussion we are going to have. Hopefully sometime November or early December. Hopefully I can get that recorded. We got to work out timings and stuff. But I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out and discussing the movie with me. Do you guys have anything you would wish to plug? That you have any cool upcoming projects or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. I'm on the top of the list, so I'll go first. Okay. SilentHillCommunity.com is back online, the forums.
Yay!
And I still need to mess with the layout and things, but anyway. And my YouTube channels are Creepy and Weird Podcasts for all things creepy and weird, Internet Kindness, which is art and mental health promotion, etc. And my Silent Hill channel is Alchemilla Hospital 1 on YouTube. And then my Etsy shop is etsy.com shop Amy Balot with Silent Hill items.
Yeah, she has a lot of great Silent Hill items. I'm seeing them pop up a lot in people's collection photos, and it just makes me so happy. I'm like, oh, it's Amy.
I love
stuff.
the health drinks.
Yeah.
OG health drinks.
Yeah, I love it.
You can follow me at Levito on Twitter. That's at LEVIT0. I write for mainly, I do a lot of reviews for IGN, and I also do news and interviews for USA Today. The most recent thing is I don't think Silent Hill fans care, but I interviewed Naoki Yoshida, who's the director of Final Fantasy XIV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Really cool.
That's really cool. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun. And he confirmed that one of his characters is a Redditor. He said it, not me. Anyways.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a conspiracy theory or something about this?
No, there's a character, and for people who've played 14, it's Alphino, who starts out as a little fuckboy, and like Yoshida said like he totally would be someone that posts on Reddit if if it was real life. It was a lot of fun, and so I don't know. I guess you could look at my Muckrack page or something, but yeah, I do a bunch of stuff. So
are you planning on any more Silent Hill themed articles?
I have done a few Silent Hill stories. I did one on the Centralia connection. Not that it's just trying to dispel the whole like, oh, this influenced the games when it didn't. And I also interviewed the people behind the Enhanced Edition PC update. That's amazing. Still blown away by the work that team does. As for Silent Hill's a really dangerous thing to touch these days, but when you write about it, because it's weird. It's weird because it's just I won't get into it too much, but like everyone expects every single thing that comes out of Sony, especially, is some sort of secret Silent Hill thing, and it's gotten crazy. Yep. I just want, if there is a new Silent Hill out there, just just announce it or something by now. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I'm so tired. I'm so tired of hearing about this. But yeah, that's me.
I'm tired of people messaging me on Facebook, like friends, like, "Did you see this?" And I'm like, "Yes, it's not happening." "Oh, or sure, but I saw this article too." I was like, "Please, it's been like 2 years. Please stop." If it's going to be announced, believe me, I will know. I will know.
Yeah, it's I hope it, obviously we all want a new Silent Hill, but we'll see. At this point, oh god, I had something funny to say about this, but at this point, like, it'll happen when it happens, if it happens. We've been through, no fandom perhaps in all of video games has gone through the disappointment ringer quite like Silent Hill fans, I think. Like, we still got I still remember, Whitney, sorry for going off on a tangent, but sending you like, "Oh, did you know that this PT thing is a Silent Hill game?" And you're like, "What?" And then I'm like, "Yeah." And you're like, "What? No way." And then like, "No, it's for real." And then you're like, "Oh my god." And then they took it away from us. So
yeah,
anyways.
yeah, your message, I was like, "Are you fucking with me?"
Yeah.
And
PTSD.
And then you were like, "No, look."
We're all traumatized now.
Look at this Twitch stream, and I was like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" And then all came crashing down. Oh,
tumbling down.
So sad.
But yeah, I'm good. That's me.
Okay.
You can follow me at Cecil the Cat on Twitter. I can plug the website, relionhorror.com. We have an interview with a very special guest coming up. I can't think of any iconic lines that this actor said, but it's an actor that played a character that's mostly known for only having 7 minutes to play.
Oh. Okay.
But it's not that actor. And it's the one before him. We interviewed Richard Waugh, but who is super, super nice. It's coming.
Awesome.
And I also do art on Twitter. And you can check me out, like I said, at Cecil the Cat on Twitter. I do lots of horror art, and I have a Resident Evil fan comic where Jill and Rebecca are gay because I said so. And I also have a Patreon where you can support me if you really like my art, where I have a Not Safe for Work comic based on Resident Evil 6.
Isn't it called Chamber Time?
Chamber Time, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And you can follow me on Rely on Horror as well. We post tons of new stuff. We just recently reviewed the Alan Wake remastered for PS4, 5, Switch. It's coming out, I think. A couple other things. You can also follow me on Instagram at Screaming Wave. And you can also look up my art on DeviantArt under Harry M32.
Cool. And I guess you guys should already know me. This is going to be on SunHillSorkslide.com and also reposted on my Whitney Plays YouTube channel. I don't really have a lot of stuff in the works at the moment. I'm just streaming to raise money for Extra Life. My goal this year is $5,000. I'm a little over halfway to my goal. I'm hoping by my 24-hour stream I could get to that 5K. So if you guys can donate, any amount, big or small, is greatly appreciated. I stream Monday through Thursdays over on Kemiro on Twitch. And I mainly play survival horror. I am planning on streaming The Good Life once I finish my own playthrough. Because I kind of wanted to experience it on my own. I wanted to do blind, but then I'm like, no, let's just play it by myself first, and then I'll do it. So yeah, if you like survival horror and you want to see me not react to scary things and whatnot, you can watch me stream. That's all I really have going at the moment. So, oh, and if you like Deadly Premonition, I have a second channel I co-own with another Deadly Premonition superfan named Dan, aka the Hidden Object Guru. And yeah, we just did a podcast last week about our impressions of the Good Life demo. I'll link all of this stuff, of course, below if you're on YouTube or on the news post on the website. So again, thank you guys all so much for hanging out with me tonight, and thank you guys so much for listening and coming back to my dumb podcast over and over.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's always thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
great.
Hope you guys have a great Halloween. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. God is child in the... Oh, never mind. I fucked it up.
And cut.
Yeah, that's staying in.
Get down with the sickness.
I couldn't remember what... I was like, wait, no, that's not how it goes. God is child in the...
God is child in the eyes of a mother.
Yeah, sure.
You
That's what they said.
guys got it. You guys got it. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. It was fun.
Voices in the Static, the podcast of the Sound Hill fan site, SoundHillHistoricalSociety.com, was recorded and edited by me, Whitney Chavis. I want to give a big thanks to all my guests and you guys for listening. It's been a blast gushing about this series to you all over the years.